Chapter 749. Terrifying. This is too terrifying. To think that there's such a terrifying expert in this lowly dynasty. Granny Withered Flower brought Situ Hongxue and fled several thousand miles away before stopping for a moment. Grandma Withered Flower panted with lingering fear as she took out a healing elixir and consumed it. You're a sovereign. Can't you deal with him? Situ Hongxue asked. She was still in a daze because Xue Yiqing's flute music had reminded her of her past with Yi Guqin. I can't see through his strength, but he's definitely much stronger than me. Grandma Withered Flower was still in fear. Fortunately, that person knows where we came from, so he didn't chase after us. Situ Hongxue slightly knitted her brows, but she soon felt relieved. Anyway, the blood listening tower was almost destroyed. The demon magistrate who led the destruction of the Situ family had also fallen in her hands. She had taken her revenge. Oh, that's right. Since you've already taken your revenge, it's time to sever the final strand of love. Only with the death of that Yi Guqin will your 7 extinction demon heart be completely formed, Grandma Withered Flower warned. I know. Situ Hongxue slightly clenched her fists as she looked into the distance with an indifferent expression. In the blink of an eye, 7 days had passed. One after another, shocking news swept through the entire dynasty like a bomb. Within the imperial palace, blood flowed like a river. Everyone from the imperial family, including the Yuan master, had died. The Beichen mansion and the Morong family were destroyed in a single night. The blood-listening tower that was entrenched in the dark of the Saint Origin dynasty was almost uprooted. Even the vice tower master, the broken sword elder, had died. All of these news had thoroughly shocked the entire dynasty. For a moment, the dynasty was in chaos. Without the imperial family, there was no leader. All the super families and major forces started to take action. Of course, this wouldn't affect the preliminaries of the Forbidden Mountain. However, Yi Guqin also heard a series of news. His gaze was deep as he sighed in his heart. Are you back? Yi Guqin was a little disappointed, and there was a complicated look in his eyes. There was almost no need to think. The destruction of these major forces was almost a sign that Situ Hongxue had succeeded in her revenge. He recalled the time when he had saved Situ Hongxue. The girl who was crying tears of blood swore to take revenge. And now she had done it. Yi Guqin had met Situ Hongxue in the Tianhuang Plain. Situ Hongxue could have killed him, but in the end, she couldn't do it. Would Situ Hongxue be able to do it this time? Yi Guqin did not know, nor did he want to think about it. 7 days passed in the blink of an eye. As the day of the second half of the ranking competition approached, the Forbidden Purple Mountain, which had been silent for several days, became active again. Apart from a small number of prodigies who were eliminated and left in disappointment, most of the remaining people remained here. Of course, the Vermilion Bird Dynasty, the Great Yu Dynasty, the Golden Sun Dynasty, and the Dark Witch Dynasty did not leave even though they had been eliminated by Yi Guqin. Vermilion Bird Jade, Yuwenji, Yuwentian, Wangchun, and even the eliminated Yan Xiu were all present. They would not be satisfied until they saw Yi Guqin lose. That Yi Guqin does have some ability, but as long as he faces the Xinghong Crown Prince and the other top prodigies, he will definitely show his true colors and end up in an even worse state than me. Vermilion Bird Jade's injuries had improved slightly after a few days of recovery. However, there were still patches of charred marks on his skin. They were caused by the heart demon flame of Nirvana, and there were also sword marks left behind. Others like Yuwentian and Yuwenji also had many wounds on their bodies like a mark of shame. These days, there were even people mocking them in secret, making Vermilion Bird Jade, Yuwentian, and the others feel disgusted as if they had eaten a fly. Yi Guqin could vaguely feel the hateful gazes of Vermilion Bird Jade and the others. However, he did not care. While waiting, a group of people arrived from afar. It was the white-robed supremacy and the others. Everyone, the second half of the ranking competition is about to begin. The opponents will be decided by drawing lots. After repeated eliminations, the final ranking will be tabulated. The higher the ranking, the more rewards you will receive. As for the treatment of the champion, it has already been mentioned before, the white-robed supremacy said. The eyes of all the prodigies were burning with passion. Obtaining the right to enter the prodigy battlefield was nothing. Fighting for the ranking was the most important. Next, draw lots to find your opponents, the white-robed supremacy said. The 500 prodigies each drew lots. Those who drew the same lot would be their opponents. Yi Guqin, pray. The Xinghong crown prince drew a lot and said coldly. Yi Guqin glanced at him indifferently and did not say anything. The atmosphere of the entire stadium became fervent as they looked at the two people who were already at each other's throats before the start of the ranking competition. The eyes of the many spectators were filled with thick anticipation. Needless to say, the Xinghong crown prince was naturally the strongest contender for the championship. Yi Guqin, on the other hand, used his shocking performance to conquer the crowd and become the biggest dark horse in this preliminary competition. Many people were guessing whether the Xinghong crown prince would take the lead in the end, or whether Yi Guqin would be the dark horse. Both of them had extraordinary strength. It was very likely that they would encounter each other later on. Then the ranking competition began. The location was on the Forbidden Violet Mountain. There were many arenas on the Forbidden Violet Mountain for people to compete. After every round, the remaining prodigies would be able to step onto the Forbidden Violet Mountain. In the end, the final two people would fight on the peak of the Forbidden Violet Mountain to determine the champion of the preliminary competition. It was equivalent to fighting for the position of an Overlord-level forces disciple. If one could stand out in such a ranking competition and become the champion, there would definitely be Overlord-level forces extending an olive branch to them. Not long after, the first round of battles began. Yi Guqin naturally would not be so coincidental as to meet the Xinghong crown prince. His opponent was a prodigy from the ancient Cloud dynasty. Seeing that his opponent was Yi Guqin, the prodigy's face turned ugly. His cultivation was also at the grand profound martial realm. I admit defeat. The prodigy was helpless. It was not that he did not have the courage, but he did not want to waste his effort. He was simply not a match for Yi Guqin. Yi Guqin was not the only one who won without a fight. For example, the Xinghong crown prince, Princess Phoenix Dawn, Zidonglai, Gongmingba, and the other prodigies did not have the courage to fight and directly surrendered. In the second round, Yi Guqin met a prodigy with the spiritual bridge of heaven and earth. The result was no surprise. As for the sword sex Ta Lin and the others, they were all eliminated in the next 3 or 4 rounds. But to them this was a form of training, so they did not care. After 4 rounds, there were only 30 prodigies left on the Forbidden Violet Mountain. On Yi Guqin's side, apart from him, Su Jianshi was still there. What was surprising was that little fatty was also there. Then the 5th round began. Yi Guqin drew lots. At the same time, among the 30 prodigies, one of them looked at Yi Guqin with a wild and domineering gaze. Yi Guqin, it seems like your luck is over. Chapter 750. The one who spoke was an extremely muscular youth. His muscles were bulging like lumps of metal, and he had tattoos of various wild beasts. His eyes were like those of a wild beast. His pupils were vertical and exuded an extremely ferocious and wild aura. He was the top genius of the Wanshou Empire, Gongmingba, who was known as the Beast King. Yi Guqin actually encountered Gongmingba. Everyone's gazes turned to look at him. Yi Guqin's strength was needless to say. He had swept through all the geniuses of the high-tier empires, and was known as the strongest dark horse. As for Gongmingba, he was also one of the favorites to win the championship. Since the beginning of the preliminaries, this was the first time Yi Guqin had clashed with a top genius. TSK, this battle is disadvantageous for Yi Guqin. Yi Guqin is a sword cultivator, and sword cultivators are known for their extreme attacks. Gongmingba, on the other hand, specializes in the physical body. His strength and defense are boundless, which is the perfect counter for a sword cultivator. Some of the more experienced warriors were also trying to figure it out. To a certain extent, sword cultivators were the same as assassins. Their attacks were strong, but their physical strength and defense were not very strong. As for Gongmingba, he was almost equivalent to a meat shield. Not only that, but his strength was also very strong, which was the perfect counter for Yi Guqin. Looks like Yi Guqin's luck isn't very good. On the other side, Zidonglai shook his head and laughed. If Yi Guqin was eliminated, he would naturally win the bet with Kenpo. Yi Guchen, I hope you don't get eliminated. Otherwise, how can I torture you? Xing Hong Crown Prince's lips curled into a cold smile. Although Yi Guchen's strength was obvious, this battle was really disadvantageous for Yi Guchen. Most people who had not seen the battle at the Forbidden City Summit did not have high hopes for Yi Guchen. Haha, the heavens are taking revenge for us. Zhu Keiyu, Yuan Tian, and the others were overjoyed. The heavenly Tao had its own cycle of reincarnation. Who would have thought that it would be Yi Guchen's turn to suffer so soon? However, those who were familiar with Yi Guchen had strange looks in their eyes. Don't they know that junior brother Ye's body is also quite strong? Ji Ling curled her rosy lips. He's pretty strong. No, he should be extremely strong. Chu Qingqi rubbed his nose and found it a little funny. Although Yi Guchen was a sword cultivator, it would be a huge mistake to think that he was only a sword cultivator. Anyone who had witnessed the sword and saber duel would know that Yi Guchen's physical body was absolutely extraordinary. Yi Guchen and Gong Mingba stepped onto the stage. You actually have the courage to step onto the stage? Gong Mingba tilted his head slightly, his tone cold. He was 9 feet tall, and his muscles were bulging like a small giant. He cast a large shadow, and his aura was extremely oppressive. Who else can make me retreat without a fight? Yi Guchen said with an indifferent expression. Haha, what a joke. Yi Guchen, if you think that I'm the same as those trash, then you're gravely mistaken. Whether or not you can break through my physical defense is another matter altogether. Gong Mingba raised his head and laughed, his voice like thunder. When these words came out, the faces of Zhu Keiyu, Yu Wentian, Wang Chun, and the others turned as black as the bottom of a pot. It was one thing to lose miserably, but now they were being mocked and used as a negative example. In my eyes, there's no difference, Yi Guchen said, holding the Xianming heavy sword. Humph, you're not strong enough, but you talk big. I'll stand here and let you attack. Gong Mingba snorted coldly, and the aura of a 5th-stage spiritual bridge of heaven and earth surged out. His muscles were as hard as metal, shining with a hard luster. Yi Guchen didn't say anything else and swept out with the Xianming heavy sword. With a boom, the blunt edge of the Xianming heavy sword struck Gong Mingba's body. Gong Mingba's skin abruptly glowed with a metallic luster, directly blocking the sword. Interesting. Yi Guchen was slightly surprised. He just casually swung his sword, wanting to measure Gong Mingba's strength. He didn't expect that Gong Mingba would really block it. It was like a mountain. As for Gong Mingba, although he didn't show any abnormalities on the surface, his heart was secretly shocked. How can Yi Guchen's strength be so great? He's a sword cultivator. Gong Mingba was also surprised. The strength of Yi Guchen's sword was comparable to a cultivator who specialized in cultivating his physical body. But this should be his full strength. Although it's unexpected, it's still within an acceptable range, Gong Mingba said in his heart. Seeing that Yi Guchen's sword couldn't even shake Gong Mingba, the crowd was shocked. The crowd was in an uproar. Gong Mingba is too powerful. He actually blocked Yi Guchen's sword just like that. As expected, Yi Guchen might be able to sweep through the geniuses of the high-tier dynasties, but when facing a top-tier genius, his true colors are revealed. Many people shook their heads in disappointment. After all, everyone wanted to see a dark horse counterattack. But from the current situation, it seemed like Yi Guchen could only stop here. As expected, the Xinghong Crown Prince Zidonglai and the others all shook their heads, thinking that it was reasonable. Haha, dark horse? What dark horse? Gong Mingba's voice was muffled as his aura surged in all directions. He was like an unmoving iron tower. Again, Yi Guchen's heavy sword swept out again. But this time, he had the Dracophant energy of his perfect physical body and the flawless Vajra body. The Xianming heavy sword streaked across the void, letting out an ear-piercing screech. It's useless, Yi Guchen. That's all you've got. Gong Mingba didn't care as he formed a seal with his hands, and a layer of metallic luster appeared on his body. He was very curious. If he couldn't even move Yi Guchen, then how embarrassed would Yi Guchen be? But boom! When the Xianming heavy sword landed on Gong Mingba's chest, Gong Mingba's disdainful expression instantly changed as the muscles on his face twisted crazily. Bang! An extremely muffled explosion rang out, as if metal had been destroyed. But under everyone's dumbfounded gazes, Gong Mingba's body was sent flying like a heavy sandbag, leaving a long trail behind him. Pfft! Gong Mingba's chest shook as a deep bruise appeared. His sternum cracked as he spat out a mouthful of blood. The atmosphere instantly became deathly silent. Even the intense battles in the surrounding arenas couldn't attract the attention of the spectators. Hundreds of thousands of pairs of eyes fell on Yi Guqin in unison. A sword cultivator had suppressed Gong Mingba, who specialized in physical body cultivation. In terms of physical strength, everyone was dumbfounded as their minds went blank. The Xinghong Crown Prince's face sank. This was a scene that no one had expected. Yi Guqin! An earth-shattering roar came out from Gong Mingba's mouth. He stood up and a savage aura burst out from his body. His beast-like eyes stared at Yi Guqin like a hungry wolf. Obviously, Gong Mingba thought that Yi Guqin was playing with him. Chapter 751. Gong Mingba couldn't accept this. As a prodigy of a top dynasty, he had never been humiliated like this before. Beast King Fist. Gong Mingba attacked with all his strength and no longer held back. Blood-colored true qi surged out of his body. The true qi was extremely explosive and as dense as blood. It even formed the shapes of various beasts. It's the 10,000 beast true qi of the Wanshou dynasty. Some of the spectators exclaimed. 10,000 beast true qi was a unique true qi of the Wanshou dynasty. It condensed the power of 10,000 beasts and merged it with true qi. Coupled with the Wanshou dynasty's supreme king martial art, the Beast King Fist. The power of this fist was earth-shattering. As Gong Mingba punched out, the air screamed violently. The fist carried countless beast phantoms as it rushed towards Yi Guqin with the intention of destroying everything. Yi Guqin didn't dodge. His physical strength surged as he held the Xianming heavy sword and clashed with Gong Mingba. Yi Guqin isn't dodging? All of the spectators were astonished, finding this somewhat inconceivable. Gong Mingba's full strength was terrifying. Even the Xinghong Crown Prince and Zi Donglai didn't dare to take it head-on. But Yi Guqin did. Boom! A violent shockwave exploded and swept across the arena. The two figures retreated at the same time. Yi Guqin's wrist shook as he removed the rebounding force. On the other hand, Gong Mingba staggered back a few steps, leaving a hole in the ground with each step. This time, they were actually evenly matched. How can this be? The spectators were all shaken to the core. Gong Mingba's strong point was Yi Guqin's weak point, but it was still a draw? You also cultivate the physical body. Gong Mingba clenched his fists as his eyes flashed with a cold light. Yi Guqin didn't say anything. Although he mainly cultivated the physical body, his physical body and divine soul weren't weak. His physical body had passed the physical body blood tribulation and reached the perfect physical body. Then he used the tendon-changing scripture and the marrow-cleansing scripture to cultivate the diamond indestructible body. After that, he obtained the inheritance of the ancient god and cultivated the body of the ancient god. To a certain extent, he could indeed be considered a physical martial artist. However, what consumed Yi Guqin the most was the convenient cultivation of the sword Dao. Therefore, Yi Guqin answered truthfully, physical body cultivation is just a side job. I don't specialize in it. It would have been better if he hadn't said this. Once he did, Gong Mingba's face turned red and he felt like vomiting blood. A martial artist who also cultivated the physical body was actually able to fight to a draw with him, a proud son of heaven who specialized in cultivating the physical body. The onlookers were also speechless. Was there really such a blow? As for Gue Chou of the Dark Shaman dynasty, he was even more stunned. His head buzzed, and he almost spat out a mouthful of blood. In the first half, he had been crushed by Yi Guqin's soul techniques. He had thought that Yi Guqin also focused on his soul apart from his sword Dao. But now, even his physical body had been cultivated to such a level? Gue Chou almost fainted. Was there a need to be such a huge gap between people? It seems that Brother Yi has also defeated that forging genius, Duan Muyu, in the path of forging. Even Kempo was speechless. Yi Guchen's talent was simply bullying others. Impossible. Who can beat me in terms of physical body? Gong Mingba went berserk. His eyes shone with ambition and madness. On the surface of his body, countless demonic beast runes coiled around him. Myriad beast king body. Gong Mingba roared. His body grew taller, and he really became a small giant. His fist was like a stone bowl, and it bombarded Yi Guchen. The air trembled as balls of air blasted towards Yi Guchen. Great Void Sword Wave. Yi Guchen also activated his physical strength. He waved the Xianming heavy sword, and the sword resonated with the void. An endless sword wave burst forth as he fought with Gong Mingba. Gong Mingba was like a mad beast. Every move he made caused the ground to crack, and gravel flew everywhere. On the other hand, Yi Guchen's attacks were fierce, and he had no intention of dodging. Waves of air blasted out, spreading in all directions. Yi Guchen was not at a disadvantage in terms of physical strength. That Yi Guchen, Xinghong Crown Prince, Zi Donglai, and the others had already finished their battle. At this moment, they were staring at Yi Guchen. No matter how much they looked down on Yi Guchen, they had to admit that Yi Guchen was a threat to them. Boom. After another exchange, the two were both pushed back. Gong Mingba's face sank. This sword cultivator that he looked down on, and even thought that he was a natural counter to, the power that exploded out at this moment made him tremble in fear. I, Gong Mingba, have indeed underestimated you. But in terms of physical strength, I believe that I am still invincible. As Gong Mingba's words fell, the blood in his body shook. His muscles wriggled, and a bloody aura rose from the surface of his body. It turned into various shapes of lions, tigers, dragons, elephants, apes and other beasts. Looks like Gong Mingba is going to use his trump card. The crowd watched nervously. 10,000 Beast Savagery Scripture. Gong Mingba's roar was like the howls of thousands of wild beasts. His blood and qi surged out like a tide of blood, sweeping out in all directions. Kill. Gong Mingba stomped on the ground, and his entire body appeared in front of Yi Guchen in an instant. It was hard to imagine that his body was like a giant, but his speed was so fast. Heavens, it's the emperor-level cultivation technique of the 10,000 Beast Dynasty, the 10,000 Beast Savagery Scripture. I heard that this scripture can borrow the power of 10,000 beasts. Some of the geniuses had heard of it, and they were shocked. Borrowing the power of 10,000 beasts, how powerful was that? It was equivalent to combining the ferocity of a lion, the killing intent of a tiger, and the strength of an elephant. Tiger form fist. Gong Mingba attacked, and his blood surged, as if he had turned into a roaring tiger. Yi Guchen used his heavy sword to block the attack, but he could still feel a powerful force passing through the heavy sword and hitting his body. Lion form fist. Gong Mingba's fist changed into the ferocity of a lion. He was as fierce as a heavenly lion, and he wanted to tear Yi Guchen to pieces. Yi Guchen used wave-like subtle steps, and his strength was pushed to the limit as he clashed with Gong Mingba. Dragon form fist. Gong Mingba leaped into the air like a dragon, and then swooped down, his strength increasing exponentially. Boom. Yi Guchen's body was pushed back, and a deep mark was plowed in his path. Yi Guchen is finally suppressed. Some people sighed. At first, no one would have thought that Gong Mingba would have to use his trump card to suppress Yi Guchen. But was that really the case? Yi Guchen, use your sword Dao, or you won't be able to win this battle. After using the 10,000 Beast Savagery Scripture, Gong Mingba's strength was terrifying, and his confidence was greatly boosted. Oh, is that so? Yi Guchen's eyes were deep. Actually, he could use his sword Dao, but Yi Guchen also wanted to use Gong Mingba to measure his physical cultivation. But now, it was time to decide the victor. Ancient God Technique. Yi Guchen's mind moved, and a terrifying physical strength erupted like a volcano. His body instantly grew to 9 feet tall, and his body was well proportioned. Ancient light patterns appeared on the surface of Yi Guchen's body. A bright star mark appeared between his eyebrows, and it contained a mysterious ancient power. An ancient and sacred aura was emitted from his body. He was like a god with the sun and moon above his head, and his feet on the earth. Chapter 752. Ancient God Form. This was the form Yi Guqian used to display his peak physical strength. Yi Guqian, who had transformed into a one-star ancient god, had his physical strength increased by 5 times. Yi Guqian put away the Xianming heavy sword and clenched his fist. The air was torn apart and emitted a shrill sound. Now let's try again. Yi Guqian's body was covered in ancient god-light runes as he spoke again. Gong Mingba's face froze. Even if he didn't try to sense it, he could feel that Yi Guqian's physical strength had increased by several times. It was even stronger than Gong Mingba's. What kind of cultivation technique is this? Or is it a secret technique? Gong Mingba's eyes widened in disbelief. The ancient god clan was one of the 100 clans of the myriad heavens. Even overlord forces didn't know much about the 100 clans of the myriad heavens, let alone the people of the dynasties. Even the hundreds of thousands of spectating martial artists were confused. However, the only thing they knew was that Yi Guqian's physical strength was extremely strong, terrifyingly strong. I don't believe it. I definitely don't believe it. Gong Mingba went berserk. He charged forward like a beast in human form. The 10,000 beasts true qi and the 10,000 beasts savage scripture were pushed to the extreme. Yi Guqian stomped on the ground with one foot, and the entire arena shook. Cracks spread out in all directions. He punched out, and it collided with Gong Mingba's fist. However, after this exchange of fists, Gong Mingba's face instantly twisted and turned pale. He could only feel an incomparably huge force spreading from the tip of the fist, directly destroying the bones in his fingers, and causing the bones in his entire arm to crack. Ah! With a miserable cry, Gong Mingba's entire arm was shattered. It hung limply. One punch. One of Gong Mingba's arms was crippled. There was dead silence, and no sound could be heard. It was as if someone had blocked their throat. Again. Gong Mingba's eyes were bloodshot as he poured his blood into his crippled arm. It had to be said that Gong Mingba's physical body was indeed powerful. It wouldn't take long for this arm to recover. However, Yi Guqian would not give Gong Mingba this opportunity. He raised his hand and clenched it toward the void. The ancient god star between his eyebrows shone brightly. Suddenly, the mysterious power of the stars in the sky came from the void and condensed into a golden battle spear in his hand. Spear of the ancient gods. Yi Guqian shouted and threw the golden spear. The sharp spear tore through the air and pierced towards Gong Mingba. The ancient god spear was a martial art of the ancient god clan. Heavenly Eyes King had used this move when he was suppressing the chaotic world demonic ape. When Tiantong King imparted the 4-star ancient god technique to Yi Guqian, he included the martial arts of the ancient god tribe. Not only the ancient god spear, but there was also the 5 elements world-suppressing fist, ancient god king seal, ancient god immovable king armor, ancient Dao god seal, god's hand, and so on. With Yi Guqian's abilities as a 1-star ancient god, he could only use the ancient god spear. As for the other powerful martial arts of the ancient god tribe, Yi Guqian could only use them when he reached 2-star, 3-star, or 4-star. Besides, Yi Guqian also had the Eye of the Void. However, it wasn't a martial art of the ancient god tribe, but a treasure. To a certain extent, it could be treated as a gifted ability. With Yi Guqian's abilities, even if he used the ancient god spear, its power would not be comparable to Tiantong King's. However, in the spiritual bridge realm of heaven and earth, it was a powerful weapon. Oh no! Gong Mingba's expression changed. He felt a great threat from the ancient god spear. Wild bone armor. Gong Mingba's body glowed, and a set of white bone armor appeared on his body. Even so, the ancient god spear still pierced through. Crack! The spear broke through the wild bone armor, and pierced deeply into Gong Mingba's body. It brought his body out of the arena, and nailed him to the mountain in the distance with a loud boom. Everyone was silent as they watched this scene. They couldn't say a word. A top-tier dynasty's genius had been nailed to the mountain in such a wretched manner. This was too shocking. Yi Guqian withdrew his ancient god form, and his body returned to normal. He was tall and skinny, and he looked powerless. However, no one dared to underestimate Yi Guqian's physical abilities anymore. After all, even a top-tier genius like Gong Mingba, who specialized in physical strength, was defeated by Yi Guqian. Yi Guqian. The surrounding martial artists cheered. After defeating Gong Mingba, Yi Guqin had established himself as a dark horse and had the ability to fight for the championship. Humph! Crown Prince Xinghong, Zi Donglai, and the other geniuses' faces froze. If they still dared to underestimate Yi Guqin, they would be fools. Let's see who will have the last laugh, Crown Prince Xinghong said coldly. As for Zhu Keiyu, Yu Wentian, and the others who wanted to see Yi Guqin make a fool of themselves, their bodies trembled, and their faces turned purple. At this moment, their throats seemed to be blocked, and they couldn't utter a single word. Yi Guqin's strength made them give up completely. Yi Guqin wins. The referee shouted. The white-robed honored master, who was standing tall in the sky, looked deeply at Yi Guqin. This kid's luck is extraordinary, the white-robed supremacy thought to himself. He could see that Yi Guqin was extraordinary, but he didn't recognize the inheritance of the ancient god clan. In the next round, Yi Guqin met another heaven and earth spiritual bridge expert, and defeated him easily. Su Jianshi was eliminated. Her strength was at the life and death realm. Of course, if she used the power of the human sovereign sword, Yi Guqin wouldn't be able to deal with her. However, Su Jianshi wouldn't use the power of the human sovereign sword for a mere ranking. Little Fatty was also eliminated. What was worth noting was that Princess Phoenix she was matched against Zi Donglai in this round. Both of them were grade 7 prodigies with extraordinary means. What surprised everyone was that Zi Donglai was eliminated by Princess Phoenix she. It wasn't that Zi Donglai wasn't strong, but that Princess Phoenix she was too strong. That's the immortal Phoenix blood? Yi Guqin was also paying attention. It had to be said that Zi Donglai's connate purple chi was indeed not weak. The last move, Purple Chi 3,000 miles from the east, was extremely powerful. Even if Yi Guqin wanted to take it, he would have to put in some effort. However, Princess Phoenix she possessed the immortal Phoenix blood. Any injury could be healed quickly, and she could even use a powerful Phoenix flame. Seeing that Yi Guqin was paying attention to her, Princess Fengxi looked over and smiled sweetly. Haha, young Master Yi, am I powerful? Yi Guqin was silent. Humph, what's there to be proud of? Su Jianshi pouted. As time passed, only 4 of the 30 geniuses were left. Xinghong Crown Prince, Princess Phoenix she, Yi Guqin, and another prodigy from a top-tier dynasty. The next draw was Yi Guqin against Princess Phoenix she. Sigh, the situation isn't looking good for Yi Guqin. Some cultivators sighed. They were only one step away from the final battle. However, Xinghong Crown Prince's opponent was clearly much weaker than Princess Phoenix she. This way, even if Yi Guqin won in the end, he wouldn't have much strength left against Xinghong Crown Prince. Yi Guqin, I'll let Phoenix she deal with you first. Xinghong Crown Prince revealed a smug smile. Yi Guqin didn't care as he stepped onto the stage and faced off against Princess Phoenix she. The phoenix mark between Princess Phoenix she's snow-white eyebrows was as bright as fire. It gave Princess Phoenix she a noble and mysterious charm. Let's fight. Yi Guqin flipped his dark nether heavy sword and said indifferently, Young Master Yi, if Phoenix she goes all out against you, you won't have much strength left even if you win. Princess Phoenix she's eyes flickered. That might not be the case, Yi Guqin said. Is that so? Then. Princess Phoenix she twisted her waist and appeared in front of Yi Guqin. She placed her hand on Yi Guqin's shoulder and her sleeve slipped down, revealing her snow-white arm. She moved her red lips close to Yi Guqin's ear and bit her lip. Yi Guqin, I've seen you fight before and know that you're very powerful. I won't be able to take it. So, can't I admit defeat? Chapter 753. Princess Phoenix Dawn leaned close to Yi Guqin. The fragrance of her body wafted into his nose, and her words drifted into his ears. Princess Phoenix Dawn had admitted defeat. Yi Guqin raised his brows in surprise. He couldn't figure out what Princess Phoenix Dawn was thinking. All the surrounding onlookers were also stunned and confused. Princess Phoenix Dawn had already reached the top 4, but she had admitted defeat. The Xinghong Crown Prince's face was ashen. He was hoping that Princess Phoenix Dawn would exhaust Yi Guqin's strength, but not only did she admit defeat, she even leaned so close to him. What a despicable woman. Su Jianshi ground her teeth and clenched her fists. Yan Wushuang bit her lips as she felt even more uncomfortable. Thank you. Yi Guchen nodded. Although he knew that Princess Phoenix Dawn was using him, he still thanked her. Hee, I'm looking forward to seeing how you defeat the Xinghong Crown Prince. Princess Phoenix Dawn rolled her eyes at Yi Guchen and walked down the stage. On the other side, as expected, the Xinghong Crown Prince defeated his opponent. For a moment, the chaotic scene quietened down. After going through layers and layers of selections, the final two contenders for the championship of over 10 empires emerged. The Xinghong Crown Prince, Yi Guchen. Among them, the one that surprised everyone was none other than Yi Guchen. A dark horse that rose from a low-ranked dynasty had swept through a high-ranked dynasty. He had crushed all the top prodigies in the ranking competition. He had obtained the qualifications to fight for the championship in a dominating manner. This had never happened in the qualifiers of the prodigy battlefield. This was because the resources and cultivation environment that the top prodigies received were much better than the low-ranked dynasties. To put it bluntly, even the average prodigies in the top dynasties were stronger than the prodigies in the low-ranked dynasties. It was because of this that Yi Guchen's appearance attracted everyone's attention. Could it be that our guess is going to come true? Will Sword Sect Yi really become the champion today and sweep the world with his sword? Some of the local cultivators of the Saint Origin dynasty clenched their fists tightly, their eyes filled with excitement. Yi Guchen had already become a legend of sword cultivation in the dynasty. If he could become the champion again today, he would create a miracle. Perhaps in the South Horizon region, Yi Guchen's name would begin to spread. Next, let the battle for the championship begin. The white-robed reverend said in the sky. Yi Guchen stepped onto the arena at the top of the Forbidden City. After a long journey, he had finally reached this step. Just one more step and Yi Guchen would be able to win the championship. With just one more step, he would be qualified to join an overlord-level force. If he took another step forward, he would have the background to contend with Gu Xiaoyang and Di Haotian. Therefore, Yi Guchen had to win this battle. Dong dong. Yi Guchen stomped hard on the ground with every step he took, making a dull thud. He knew that although the Xinghong Crown Prince's character was inferior, his strength was unquestionable to be able to reach this step. In addition, the Sky Star Dynasty had the backing of the Starry Sword Pavilion. The Xinghong Crown Prince's strength and methods were definitely not something that the other top dynasties could compare to. The hearts of the spectators were in their throats. Today, would the Xinghong Crown Prince create an undefeated legend in a top dynasty? Or would Yi Guchen rise from the grass and soar into the 9 heavens? Everything depended on this battle. Xinghong Crown Prince, you must win. Zidonglai's face froze. He never thought that he would be eliminated by Princess Fengxi. His only hope now was for the Xinghong Crown Prince to win. Otherwise, he would lose half of his talent to Kenpo. Brother Yi, if you win this time, I'm afraid that the Sword Dynasty's Sword Dao Alliance will also know about you. Kenpo sighed in his heart. In addition, Su Jianshi, Yin Wushuang, Little Fatty and the others were also watching. Princess Fengxi was also watching. Dong. Finally, the two stepped onto the stage. The Xinghong Crown Prince had a stalwart figure and wore a starry robe. The starry wool behind his head was like a star that emitted endless starlight. His cultivation technique inheritance came from the Grand Emperor of the Heavenly Star Dynasty, who was also an elder of the Starry Sword Pavilion. Therefore, the Xinghong Crown Prince could be considered half a disciple of the Starry Sword Pavilion. Because of this, his strength was not something that Zidonglai, Gong Mingba and the others could compare to. Yi Guchen's face was grave as he pointed the Xianming heavy sword at the ground. Yi Guchen, if you treat me like a prodigy like Gong Mingba, I'm afraid that you'll die a miserable death. The Xinghong Crown Prince said in a deep voice. I'm not looking down on you, although you are indeed a small fry, Yi Guchen said indifferently. The surrounding crowd fell silent. Only Yi Guchen would dare to speak to the Xinghong Crown Prince so directly. Do you only know how to talk? Don't think that you can be arrogant just because you defeated Guzun. The Xinghong Crown Prince's aura rose as the strength of a level 6 spiritual bridge of heaven and earth erupted. You are not as good as him. Yi Guchen also unleashed the strength of his great hidden gate cultivation. For a moment, the Forbidden City's peak was turbulent as the sky changed color. You're courting death. Let me shatter your sword sex's name. The Xinghong crown prince did not say anything else. He took a step forward and rushed out. He raised his hand and blasted out. Vigorous true qi condensed in his palm. The Xinghong crown prince cultivated the Starry Sword Pavilion's mid-grade cultivation technique, the primary pole constellation scripture. Therefore, his true qi was refined by the primary pole constellation scripture and turned into a heterogeneous true qi. A gust of silver true qi burst out from his palm and turned into a spreading nebula. Nebula palm. The Xinghong crown prince blasted out a palm that seemed to turn into a galaxy and attacked Yi Guqin. Yi Guqin also gathered the golden true qi in his body and infused it into the Xianming heavy sword. Celestial slaying sword technique, celestial extinction. The ferocious sword was accompanied by a sharp sword radiance. It tore the air in front of it and collided with the Xinghong crown prince's move. The star true qi collided with the golden true qi and exploded with countless crackling sounds like sparks. There was a loud bang and a ring of airwaves exploded on the Forbidden City's peak. The two of them were entangled in a battle in an instant, and the shockwaves were extremely intense. The Xinghong crown prince's palm was vigorous. Every palm he blasted out was like a galaxy. Yi Guqin performed the celestial slaying sword technique. The sword radiance swept out, and it seemed to show the scene of a group of immortals falling. Nebula chain. The Xinghong crown prince performed a special martial art again. He blasted out a palm and vigorous silver star true qi burst out and condensed into silver true qi chains. In an instant, Yi Guqin's left hand and left leg were bound. That's the Starry Sword Pavilion's martial art technique. Some of the sky prides in the surroundings exclaimed. The Starry Sword Pavilion's martial art was exquisite and far surpassed the martial arts of these top dynasties. Yi Guqin is at a disadvantage now. The surrounding crowd watched intently. The Xinghong crown prince revealed a cold smile. He stomped on the ground and his figure flashed up and appeared in front of Yi Guqin. Yi Guqin's left hand and left leg were bound, and it was difficult for him to break free. Die. The Xinghong crown prince's vast palm struck toward Yi Guqin's head. He actually wanted to kill Yi Guqin directly. Chapter 754. Feeling the powerful palm wind that assaulted him, Yi Guqin's expression changed slightly. Yi Guqin was slightly surprised by the nebula chain in his hand. Starry Sword Pavilion's martial arts indeed had extraordinary aspects. But how terrifying was Yi Guqin's battle instinct? He turned the heavy sword in his right hand. The heavy sword body blocked in front of him like a shield. Crown Prince Xinghong's palm slammed onto the sword body. With a loud explosion, Yi Guqin's figure fell back. Crown Prince Xinghong controlled the nebula chain again, pulled Yi Guqin back, and continued to attack with his palm. Really think that you can trap me? Yi Guqin's expression was cold. The perfect physical body's strength of the dragon and elephant, and the power of the impeccable Vajra body erupted at the same time. Yi Guqin's hands and feet shook. Golden true energy gushed out, directly shattering the nebula chain that was binding him. At the same time, Yi Guqin borrowed this pulling force and swept his sword towards Crown Prince Xinghong fiercely once again. God-slaying sword technique Yama. Endless blood-colored sword light soared into the sky along with this sword. A blood-colored Yama's shadow rose from the ground. This sword's power was extremely powerful, and its lethality was formidable. Heavenly Star Shield. Crown Prince Xinghong gave a cold cry. A streak of starlight shot out from his sleeve, expanding sharply against the wind, turning into a resplendent starlight shield. Clang! An ear-piercing sound of metal clashing burst out. The heavenly star shield trembled for a while, blocking Yi Guqin's sword momentum. When Crown Prince Xinghong saw the situation, he waved his hand again. Endless silver fine sand spread out. What's that? Throwing sand? Some spectating ancient martial art practitioners saw the situation and were somewhat stunned. It could actually use sand as a weapon? What do you know? If I'm not wrong, that should be Starry Sword Pavilion's unique star silver sand. Rumor has it that in Starry Sword Pavilion, there's an immemorial meteorite that fell from the sky. The 9 heaven star fire and star silver sand were obtained from the immemorial meteorite. Some people from the top dynasties who knew a little opened their mouths. The starry silver sand was a weapon unique to the starry sword pavilion. Sure enough, when this cluster of star silver sand was sprinkled out, it immediately expanded in the wind and turned into a silver meteorite, falling towards Yi Guqin with a loud rumble. One had to know that the densely packed stellar silver sand could produce countless meteorites. It was as if a meteor shower was raining down on Yi Guqin. The starry sword pavilion's methods are indeed extraordinary. Even the white-robed elder watching from the sky shook his head slightly. Although Yi Guqin, the dark horse, had surprised him, the Xinghong Crown Prince had a portion of the starry sword pavilion's inheritance. He was indeed an extremely powerful opponent. Rumble. In the void, meteorites collided with each other, bursting into sparks that simultaneously enveloped Yi Guqin. The entire Forbidden City arena was covered. Even if one relied on wave-like subtle steps, there was no place to hide. This was an indiscriminate, carpet-style attack. If it were someone else, it might be a headache, but for me. The corners of Yi Guqin's mouth curled up slightly. He stepped on the ground with one foot. As he raised his hand, endless genuine qi gathered like a dragon and burst out. Rumble. There seemed to be thousands of sword chimes and trembling sounds coming from Yi Guqin's body. 108,000 sword souls surged out of his body. It was as if a green dragon had burst out from Yi Guqin's body and swept out. In an instant, the entire Forbidden City arena was filled with sword qi and sword chimes. The 108,000 heaven-ripping sword souls were also a large area of effect attack. In the previous scuffle, Yi Guqin had used the sword souls to sweep across the various dynasties. In front of the 108,000 sword souls, the number of people was not an advantage at all. At this moment, Yi Guqin used the power of the sword souls again to collide with the meteorites that were formed by the starry silver sand. In just a few breaths' time, there seemed to be thousands of collisions bursting out, and countless sparks splashed across the sky. It was the meteorites colliding with the sword souls. It was a spectacular scene that filled the entire sky and burst forth with vast waves. Under such a background, Xinghong Crown Prince charged over again, and formed a seal with both his hands. Daoyuo Star Seal. Xinghong Crown Prince formed a seal with both his hands and vigorous star true qi rolled and brewed within. In the end, it turned into a silver seal that was dazzling. Starlight flowed on it, as though it was depicting the trajectory of the stars. It's the martial arts of Starry Sword Pavilion again. There were exclamations from the surroundings again. Xinghong Crown Prince was simply half an entry-level disciple of Starry Sword Pavilion. The divine weapon and techniques that he used belonged to Starry Sword Pavilion. Doesn't this mean that Yi Guqin is fighting with an overlord-level force's disciple? Some people thought. Facing Xinghong Crown Prince's powerful attack, Yi Guqin's expression did not change. If he couldn't even deal with Xinghong Crown Prince, how could he deal with Gu Xiaoyang, one of the 7 great bears in the future? Yi Guqin activated the Azura Sword Principle, and his eyes were swallowed by the blood color. A terrifying sword intent that was as deep as the sea erupted and turned the surroundings into a blood-colored sword domain. It's the Sword Principle. Those Dynasty Sky Prides who had never seen the sword-saber duel were shocked once again. The Sword Principle was the true trump card of a sword cultivator. God-slaying sword art Paramitha. Using the Azura Sword Principle to activate the God-slaying sword art, the two complemented each other, and the power increased by several folds. Yi Guqin's sword tip swept across the void and the blood-colored sword qi turned into a gorgeous yet decadent Paramitha flower. The red spider lily bloomed and brought not only magnificence but also death. Boom! The Daoyuo star seal clashed with the Paramitha sword. The sword qi and power of the stars surged in all directions. Xinghong Crown Prince's body shook and was blasted back. He let out a groan from his chest. Yi Guqin was also blasted back. His shoulder trembled and dispersed the rebounding force. Is this all there is to Starry Sword Pavilion's martial arts? Yi Guqin raised his sword and spoke in a cold tone. Yi Guqin, it's too early for you to be complacent. Galaxy gloves. Xinghong Crown Prince moved his hands, and a pair of silver gloves appeared on his palms. They glowed with resplendent starlight, and were imprinted with a spirit pattern array that emitted powerful fluctuations. You have quite a lot of treasures. Yi Guqin's sword tip swept over. The heavenly star shield, star silver sand, and galaxy gloves were all treasures of Starry Sword Pavilion. As the strongest sky pride of the heavenly star dynasty, Xing Hong Crown Prince naturally received preferential treatment from the retired emperor. Heavenly Secret 7 Stars Fist. Xing Hong Crown Prince put on the supreme grade galaxy gloves and threw out 7 punches in a row. Each punch was stronger than the last. It was as if there were 7 stars from outer space that came crashing down on Yi Guqin at the same time. Azura Blood C18 levels. Yi Guqin no longer held back, and the Azura Sword Principle's domain appeared. The blood-colored sword chi turned into a blood tide that rumbled in all directions. An 18 levels of blood prison broke free from the blood sea and suppressed Xing Hong Crown Prince. After the sword intent turned into sword principle, Yi Guqin could also use the sword principle domain to suppress the enemy. Rumble. Although Xing Hong Crown Prince's means were not weak, he was still unable to cope with the sword principle domain. The 18 levels of blood prison suppressed and extinguished Xing Hong Crown Prince's fist radiance. It was like a blood-colored mountain that suppressed Xing Hong Crown Prince. Is it over? Everyone's breathing seemed to have stopped. Was the champion of the preliminaries going to fall into Yi Guqin's hands just like that? Yi Guqin's expression did not change, and there was no trace of joy. Yi Guqin. A furious roar could be heard all of a sudden. The sword principle domain was shaking and there was a loud bang as endless starlight exploded. An incomparably dazzling starlight spread out like a wheel, shaking off the sword Dao domain. It's the emperor-level cultivation technique, primary star scripture. Everyone exclaimed, and the people of the Heavenly Star Dynasty were even more excited. They knew that Xing Hong Crown Prince was going to be serious. Chapter 755. Although the primary pole constellation scripture was a lower royal level cultivation technique, it was a royal level cultivation technique. However, as long as it was a royal level cultivation technique, there was no need to doubt its power. Even if it was a lower royal level cultivation technique, it was still powerful enough. At that moment, Xing Hong Crown Prince finally activated the primary pole constellation scripture that he had cultivated for many years. Behind his head, the starry light will spread out lumps of dazzling starlight, as though it had transformed into a starry domain, resisting Yi Guqin's 18 levels of Azura Blood Sea. 3,000 stars illusory body. Xing Hong Crown Prince's movements did not stop. After shaking off Yi Guqin's sword Dao domain, he immediately executed his movement technique. In an instant, starlight surged on Xing Hong Crown Prince's body. Then, under everyone's astonished gaze, he divided into hundreds of light shadows. In every light shadow, Xing Hong Crown Prince's body was revealed. 3,000 stars illusory body. Rumor has it that when cultivated to the extreme, one can divide into 3,000 illusory bodies. It's impossible to distinguish them. The surrounding warriors could not help but comment when they saw the situation. Xing Hong Crown Prince's 3,000 stars illusory body was far from being cultivated to the transformative realm. He could only divide into hundreds of light shadows. However, these hundreds of light shadows were difficult to distinguish between real and fake. It was dazzling. Starlight Thorn. These hundreds of illusory bodies executed their martial arts at the same time. Starlight spat out from their palms as though it had turned into silver thorns, charging towards Yi Guqin. Yi Guqin's eyes were instantly swallowed by the color of blood. Activate the Eye of Azura. However, to Yi Guqin's surprise, his Eye of Azura did not immediately see through the illusory bodies. This was because every illusory body was surging with star true energy. It was impossible to see through them, as though every one of them was real. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. The illusory bodies pierced through the air and attacked. Yi Guqin blocked with his sword, but the illusory bodies were destroyed immediately. Fake. Yi Guqin suddenly felt danger. His body moved to the side, and a starlight thorn brushed past Yi Guqin's side, cutting off a strand of black hair. He actually dodged it. The real body of the Xing Hong Crown Prince was also surprised. His body flashed and once again merged into the hundreds of illusory figures. Yi Guqin is in trouble now. He's in a desperate situation, surrounded by hundreds of phantoms. He can't tell which one is real and which one is fake. He's too passive. A few people watched nervously. Could it be that a dark horse's counterattack was going to end here? We can't say that Yi Guqin isn't strong. We can only say that Xinghong Crown Prince can be considered half a disciple of the Starry Universe Sword Pavilion. His various treasures, cultivation techniques, and martial arts techniques aren't something that ordinary sky prides can compare to. There were also people who sighed and felt that Yi Guqin was born at the wrong time. If he had appeared a little earlier or a little later, he might have been able to become the champion and create a miracle. It's a pity that the Eye of Azura's main use is to intimidate the enemy's mind, not to see through the flaws of the real and the fake. Yi Guqin sighed inwardly. If it were Gu Zun's Eye of the Saber Demon, he would have been able to see through the illusions. However, the Eye of Azura's main use wasn't to see through illusions. In this aspect, it couldn't compare to the Saber Demon's Eye, which could see through all flaws. But if you think you can suppress me with just this, then you must be dreaming. In the eyes of others, Yi Guqin was in a passive position. However, only Yi Guqin knew that his strength was far from being fully displayed. Since I can't see through them, then I'll use my spirit perception to scan them. Yi Guqin's primal chaos sea of consciousness suddenly spread out. An incomparably terrifying mass of primal chaos soul power covered the entire Forbidden Violet Summit arena. What a vigorous soul power. Is this really the soul power that a life and death chamber can possess? The moment Yi Guqin's spirit perception was released, it caused an uproar once again. This kid's spirit perception is also extraordinary. Even the white-robed sovereign was surprised. After breaking through the primal chaos sea of consciousness, Yi Guqin's spirit perception was extremely powerful. Even if the phantoms were disguised with true qi, they couldn't prevent the detection of the spirit perception. Swoosh! A phantom attacked again, but Yi Guqin ignored it directly. At the same time, his body suddenly tilted, and the Xianming heavy sword suddenly slashed at a phantom on the right behind him. Boom! The sword landed on the spot. How is this possible? There was a cry of surprise followed by a painful groan. The Xinghong Crown Prince's real body was blasted out. His arm made cracking sounds as he was heavily injured by the heavy sword. 5 Emperor's Cosmos Sword Formation Go. Yi Guqin saw through the Xinghong Crown Prince's real body and used his ultimate technique again. Endless 5-colored formation runes spread out, and 5 different colored divine lights split the sky and earth. They were the 5 formation swords of Emperor Jin, Emperor Qing, Emperor He, Emperor Qi, and Emperor Huang. Rumble. The entire 5-colored arena was enveloped by the 5 Emperor's Cosmos Sword Formation. The 5 formation swords directly attacked the Xinghong Crown Prince's real body. Damn it! The Xinghong Crown Prince's face was cold. He took out the Heavenly Star Shield again, and clashed with the formation swords. The surrounding hundreds of phantoms also disappeared at the same time, because they had lost their effect and could no longer confuse Yi Guqin. Earth Rank Formation. Yi Guqin's 5 Emperor's Cosmos Sword Formation shocked many of the dynasty's sky prides who had never seen the sword and saber duel. A life and death threshold martial artist activating an Earth Rank Formation. In their eyes it was absolutely a fantasy. But now they saw it with their own eyes. 5 Elements Sword Field. Yi Guqin activated the illusory 5 Elements Sword Field again, and cooperated with the 5 Emperor's Cosmos Sword Formation to suppress the Xinghong Crown Prince. The surrounding spectators were completely speechless. The Azura Sword Dao and the 5 Elements Sword Intent had completely intimidated them. 1,000 Shadows Star Kill. The Xinghong Crown Prince's face was as calm as water. The galaxy gloves burst out with endless starlight. In an instant, it was as if he had thrown out hundreds and thousands of punches. At the same time, he controlled the Heavenly Star Shield to block the attack of the 5 formation swords. 1,000 God Tribulation, Heaven and Earth Extermination. Yi Guqin held the sword with both hands, and the sword wings bloomed. Vigorous and biting cold sword qi gathered at the tip of the sword and slashed at the Xinghong Crown Prince. Rumble. The sound of the collision was like rolling thunder, sweeping in all directions. The Xinghong Crown Prince was forced back again and coughed up blood. The Heavenly Star Shield, which was comparable to a supreme-grade defensive divine weapon, was almost unable to withstand the bombardment of the 5 formation swords. Cracks had already begun to appear on its surface. The Xinghong Crown Prince's situation is not good. Some of the dynasty's sky prides frowned. Zidonglai clenched his fists tightly as cold sweat seeped out of his back. If the Xinghong Crown Prince really lost, then he was finished. After losing half of his innate purple qi, even if Zidonglai didn't become a cripple, he would still be half-crippled and become mediocre from then on. Yiguchen, don't get carried away. The Xinghong Crown Prince was also furious after being forced back continuously. His eyes were bloodshot. Even if he didn't underestimate Yiguchen's strength still greatly exceeded his expectations. The Xinghong Crown Prince knew that if he didn't go all out today, he might really be defeated by Yiguchen. You forced me to do this. Primary Pole Star Cannon. Star King descends. The Xinghong Crown Prince was seething with anger as he let out a long howl. His hair was loose and his eyes seemed to burst out with endless starlight. The starlight wool behind his head suddenly spread out and enveloped his body. Countless mysterious and profound star marks appeared on the Xinghong Crown Prince's body. A set of astral heavenly armor that overflowed with starlight also appeared on the surface of his body. At this moment, the Xinghong Crown Prince was really like the Star King descending into the world. His aura was powerful and oppressive. Chapter 756. Is this the strongest form of the Xinghong Crown Prince? Looking at the Xinghong Crown Prince, who was floating in midair with airflow surging and starlight shining in the sky, the hundreds of thousands of spectators around the forbidden Violet Mountain were speechless. At this moment, the starlight wheel behind the Xinghong Crown Prince's head was spinning slowly. Waves of starlight were being emitted from it. His eyes were completely filled with starlight. His pupils couldn't be seen clearly as his eyes were filled with blazing light. The astral heavenly armor on his body made him look like a star god of war. His aura was very oppressive. This was the Astral King possession form that could be manifested when the primary pole astral scripture was activated to the extreme. Yiguchen, now let's fight again. The Xinghong Crown Prince spoke. His voice was much louder than before. It was like the sound of heaven as it echoed. He attacked directly. His figure was extremely fast. In almost an instant, he was in front of Yiguchen. It was simple. He threw out a punch, accompanied by the spreading starlight. Yiguchen slashed out with his sword. The blade of the sword collided with the galaxy boxing glove. A majestic force surged. It was a few times stronger than before. Even Yiguchen couldn't react in time, and was forced to take a few steps back. Humph, Yiguchen, it's your stupidity to force me to use my strongest form. The Xinghong Crown Prince's face was cold. At this moment, his strength, speed, defense, and true qi were more than a few times stronger than before. His current strength was estimated to be around the 8th stage of the Heaven and Earth Spirit Bridge. In addition to the various means of the Starry Universe Sword Pavilion, the Xinghong Crown Prince didn't believe that he would lose to Yiguchen. You're too optimistic. Yiguchen saw the situation and activated the edgeless sword intent once again. The majestic sword intent swept out and turned into an illusory sword Dao domain in midair. It was the gravity sword domain formed by the edgeless sword intent. Another sword intent. The dynasty's sky prides were stunned. Although they had heard about it before, it was still shocking. 2 great sword intents and a great sword Dao. They were all at the supreme level. It was shocking. These 2 peerless sword intents, 1 peerless sword Dao, and that terrifying sea of consciousness and fleshly body. What exactly is this kid's background? Even Reverend White Run, who was standing high in the sky, had a change in expression as he took a deep breath. Even now, he did not dare to believe that Yiguchen was someone from a low-grade empire. Who knows, there might be a powerful force behind this kid. The white-robed old man's gaze deepened. In the arena of the Forbidden City, after Yiguchen brought out his gravity sword domain, a special gravitational field pressed down. The entire arena seemed to sink down a little. This kind of domain could not affect Yiguchen, but it pressed down on the Xinghong Crown Prince. After transforming into the Star King form, all aspects of Crown Prince Xinghong's attributes skyrocketed. But now he felt as if an ancient mountain was pressing down on his head. Zhangxian's strength, speed, and so on were all suppressed. Unlike Guzun, he did not possess the 7 slaughter ancient saber that specialized in breaking through sword Dao domains. Humph, even so, I can still suppress and kill you, Crown Prince Xinghong sneered. Although he was suppressed by the gravity sword domain, and his skyrocketing strength was weakened, he was still much stronger than before. Star-picking hand. Crown Prince Xinghong raised his hand, and began to display his true ultimate skill. Vigorous star true chi gathered in his hand and finally turned into a huge silver palm. It was covered with star marks, and was indescribably mysterious. It was as if he could crush a mountain with a single palm strike. It's the Star Universe Sword Pavilion's Emperor-level martial art, the star-picking hand. Some people recognized the martial art that Crown Prince Xinghong was displaying, and immediately cried out in surprise. With Crown Prince Xinghong's original strength, it was difficult for him to easily display an Emperor-level martial art. However, after activating his Star King form, he could display it with his full strength. Reincarnation Sword Lotus. As Yi Guqin raised his hand, golden sword chi spurted out, and turned into a golden sword lotus. This golden sword lotus did not have the previous 72 leaves. Instead, it had become 108 leaves. After this period of meditation and cultivation, Yi Guqin's cultivation of the reincarnation sword lotus had also taken a step forward. The golden sword lotus with 108 leaves rotated in the air. It was beautiful, but it also carried a fatal lethality. Feng Manlu relied on the complete 360 leaves of the reincarnation sword lotus to instantly kill Xian Wuji, who had just become a venerable realm expert. Although Yi Guqin's sword lotus was far from being comparable to Feng Manlu's, it was still a powerful weapon to deal with Crown Prince Xinghong. The golden sword lotus drew a beautiful line in the air, and collided with the star-picking hand. Suddenly, the heavens and earth went silent. After a few breaths, a violent wave of true energy spread out, accompanied by a deafening buzzing sound. Endless sword chi boiled and the power of the stars surged. They collided and destroyed each other. The huge silver hand tried to grab the golden sword lotus in its palm and destroy it. However, the golden sword lotus bloomed and burst out with endless sword chi, piercing through the huge hand. For a moment, a series of explosions were heard. The entire Forbidden City was covered by endless light. In the aurora, Yi Guqin and Crown Prince Xinghong's figures were also pushed back by the aftershocks. Both of them were injured. However, in the blink of an eye, he flashed forward and tangled with them. Yi Guqin, my true chi, strength, speed, and defense are all invincible. How can you be my opponent? Crown Prince Xinghong roared and his eyes shone brightly. Yi Guqin swung his heavy sword at Crown Prince Xinghong. The astral heavenly armor on his body released mysterious defensive runes and reduced the force by 70%. He was unable to hurt Crown Prince Xinghong. Is that so? Do you think you are the only one who can change forms? Hearing this, Yi Guqin also activated the Ancient God tactic. In terms of level, the Ancient God tactic was only higher than the primary pole star scripture. Boom. An ancient and desolate aura was emitted from Yi Guqin's body. His body expanded to 9 feet. Ancient God light runes spread out from under his skin, and the star mark appeared. Yi Guqin transformed into his Ancient God form. His physical strength increased by 5 times. Every move he made caused the air to compress and explode. Let's try again. Yi Guqin swung his Xianming heavy sword again. The sword wind was oppressive and there was a violent whistling sound. Boom. As though heavenly weapons clashed, the heavy sword struck the astral heavenly armor. The ferocious force caused Crown Prince Xinghong's expression to change. Swoosh. Crown Prince Xinghong's body was like an arrow as he crashed onto the stage. Cracks spread out around him. With just one sword, Crown Prince Xinghong, who was in his Star King form, was sent flying. All the martial artists were stunned. They didn't expect that even Crown Prince Xinghong, who was in his Star King form, couldn't suppress Yi Guqin. Damn it! In the pit, there was a burst of light. Crown Prince Xinghong escaped with blood at the corner of his mouth. Although he had the astral heavenly armor to protect him, Yi Guqin, who was in his Ancient God form, was too strong. The sword earlier had directly injured his lungs. The two of them stood facing each other, and looked at each other. In an instant, the chaotic battle quietened down strangely. Yi Guqian, who was in his ancient god form, Crown Prince Xinghong, who was in his Star King form. Both of them changed their forms. Their abilities increased tremendously as they faced each other with equal harshness. Yi Guqian, you have indeed exceeded my expectations. Next, I will decide the outcome. Fallen Star Bow, Star Destroyer Arrow. Crown Prince Xinghong extended his hand. 2 lumps of starlight bloomed from his hand. Chapter 757. The 2 balls of light in Xinghong Crown Prince's hands dissipated. In his left hand was a silver bow that was 6 feet long. In his right hand were 9 silver arrows. The arrowhead of each arrow was engraved with armor-piercing spiritual runes. These were the weapons of the Starry Sword Pavilion. Oh no, Brother Yi is in trouble. Kinpo's expression changed. The falling star bow and the star punishment arrow were famous weapons of the Starry Sword Pavilion. It was rumored that the 9 arrowheads of the star punishment arrow were made of metal from the ancient meteorites of the Starry Sword Pavilion. You only know how to rely on external items? Yi Guqian's eyes were cold. Although he said that, he didn't underestimate the falling star punishment arrow. He felt an extremely dangerous aura from the star punishment arrow. Star punishment arrow. Xinghong Crown Prince drew the bow. In the form of a star king, he was extremely powerful. He pulled the falling star bow to a full moon, and placed the star punishment arrow on it. Whoosh! The arrow shot out as if it had turned into a star dragon. It roared in the void and shot towards Yi Guqian. Immortal fall. Seeing this, Yi Guqian swept out his celestial slaying sword technique, and performed his ultimate move. However, Yi Guqian's ancient god power wasn't able to send the star punishment arrow flying. A huge force came from the sword. Yi Guqian was pushed back, and the web between his thumb and forefinger was torn. This arrow is close to the power of an emperor-class martial art. Sensing the terrifying might of the Star Destroyer arrow, the surrounding spectators all sucked in a breath of cold air. After the star punishment arrow was shot out, it flew towards Xinghong Crown Prince as if it had a mind of its own. Humph, the retired emperor of the Starry Dynasty is really generous to give such a treasure to Xinghong Crown Prince. Princess Phoenix Dawn's charming face was cold and filled with disdain. Xinghong Crown Prince's strength was definitely weaker than Yi Guqian. However, he was able to pose a threat to Yi Guqian with his various weapons and treasures. Su Jianshi and the others felt their hearts tighten. Haha again. Crown Prince Xinghong was in high spirits, his hair fluttering in the wind. Once again, he drew the bow and knocked an arrow, infusing all of his star energy into the falling star bow. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. He shot out 3 star execution arrows in succession, and it was as if 3 starry dragons had burst forth, causing ripples to appear in the sky. Everywhere the arrows passed, the arena would shatter, and 3 deep marks would be plowed out. Is this what you're relying on? Yi Guqian's expression was cold, and there wasn't much fear in his eyes. Myriad God Tribulation, Fall of the Masses. Yi Guqian supported himself with the Azura Sword Dao, and blood-red sword chi filled the sky. Common life fall swept out, accompanied by the cries of all living beings. It was like a sword that could destroy the heavens and destroy the earth. Boom, boom, boom. This sword strike slashed apart 3 star eradication arrows in succession. Humph, again 7-star alignment. Those star extermination arrows flew back towards Crown Prince Xinghong. He knocked 7-star extermination arrows on his falling star bow at the same time. Activating the astral true energy in his body, blood trickled down from the corner of his mouth. Even the fingers he used to draw the bow felt as though they were about to break. Boom, 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 boom. 7 explosive sounds rang out continuously. 7-star eradication arrows were shot out at the same time. The residual true energy that burst out tore the air apart and destroyed the arena. It was as if 7 astral dragons had rushed out at the same time, crossing the heavens and shooting towards Yi Guqian. It was extremely powerful. Just 1-star eradication arrow's power was close to an emperor-level martial art. At this moment, 7 arrows were shot out at the same time. It was as if they could destroy the stars in the sky. The fluctuations were extremely powerful. Facing this fatal arrow, Hundreds of thousands of people held their breaths as they waited. Could it be that the preliminary champion had come to an end? Just as everyone was waiting anxiously, Yi Guqin finally moved. He raised his hand, an endless sword-chi soared into the sky. His entire person seemed to have turned into a sharp sword that could slash the heavens and destroy the earth. Body into the firmament, heaven and earth into the sword. The human heart is fearless. The sword is unparalleled. Man and sword become one. Yi Guqin finally used the man and sword become one, displaying the true essence of the sword. Its man and sword become one. The members of the various dynasties had astonished expressions. The white-robed old man was even more surprised. Although he wasn't a sword cultivator, he'd heard of the name of man and sword becoming one. In the entire South Horizon region, probably only some experts with extremely high attainments in the sword Dao were able to comprehend it. Yet now he actually saw it on a genius from a low-level dynasty. Yi Guqin flashed explosively toward Xinghong Crown Prince, and the 7-star eradication arrows were unable to obstruct his figure. Yi Guqin's figure was the sharpest sword. It was as if it had become one with his Netharism heavy sword, and it directly blasted the 7-star eradication arrows flying. Of course, after suffering the force of the recoil, fresh blood flowed from the corners of Yi Guqin's mouth. But this wasn't a big problem. The tip of his sword flashed explosively toward Xinghong Crown Prince. Impossible. 9-star alignment, heaven and earth eradication. Xinghong Crown Prince's pupils constricted abruptly when he saw this, and he revealed astonishment. He completely did not expect that the power of man and sword becoming one was actually so powerful. Those 7-star eradication arrows flew back. Along with the remaining 2, Xinghong Crown Prince placed them on the falling star bow together. He spat out a large mouthful of blood essence, soaking it on the falling star bow. His entire person's aura was dispirited, falling by a large chunk. Clearly, this was Xinghong Crown Prince's final method, wanting to thoroughly determine a victor with Yi Guqin. 9-star God eradication, open for me. Xinghong Crown Prince pulled with all his might, and under everyone's astonished gazes, Xinghong Crown Prince's fingers that pulled the bow were actually cut into his flesh by the bowstring. Of course, those 9 arrows also shot out explosively. 9-star God eradication. 9 arrows shooting out in unison seemed to really be able to exterminate the gods in the sky. The aura of annihilation swept out the summit of the Forbidden City. Duga 9 Swords sword-breaking style. Yi Guqin also executed his signature ultimate skill. Man and sword becoming one, slashing apart heaven and earth. Sword-breaking style, breaking all laws. Bang, bang, bang. 9 streaks of resplendent star eradication light rainbows collided together with Yi Guqin's sword move in succession. Great annihilation erupted. The aftershock of the impact destroyed the surrounding arenas. The summit of the Forbidden City that was originally riddled with scars suffered even more impact. Rubble pierced through the air, mountain rocks collapsing. With a loud bang, a mushroom cloud rose up from the summit. Several 100,000 gazes landed on the summit of the Forbidden City in unison. Just how was the result? When the smoke and dust dissipated, Yi Guqin's figure stood. The hand that held the sword had fresh blood flowing down. His shoulder also had a bloody hole pierced by a star eradication arrow. But overall, it was still considered alright. On the other side, Xinghong Crown Prince's hair was disheveled, half kneeling on the ground. The astral heavenly armor on his body spread out enormous cracks. Under everyone's shocked gazes, the heavenly armor shattered. Xinghong Crown Prince raised his head to the sky and vomited a large mouthful of blood. His aura fell frenziedly, returning to his original state. Who won and who lost, there was no need to say anymore. He won. Heavens, am I seeing things? Yi Guqin won. That's right, Yi Guqin won. Yi Guqin has created an unprecedented record. Coming from a low-grade dynasty, he swept through all the high-grade and top-grade dynasties. At this moment, Yi Guqin was the center of attention. He had become the champion of the preliminaries. No, how could this be? Zi Donglai's face was pale. As for the people that Yi Guqin had defeated, Vermilion Bird Jade, Yu Wentian and the others, they had completely lost their souls. It was as if they had been petrified as they stood rooted to the ground. I knew it would be this result. Kimpo smiled. He wasn't surprised at all. Yi Guqin, you really didn't let me down. Princess Phoenix Dawn's watery eyes shone brightly. Actually, she wasn't sure if Yi Guqin had the strength to defeat Xinghong Crown Prince. But the facts proved everything. After a moment of dead silence, the crowd erupted into deafening cheers. No one would have thought that Yi Guqin, the dark horse of a low-grade dynasty, would succeed in his counterattack. He swept through all the geniuses of the various dynasties with his sword and became the champion. Finally, I succeeded. Yi Guqin revealed a faint smile as he heaved a sigh of relief in his heart. After becoming the champion, he would have the status of a preparatory disciple of an overlord-grade faction. After that, he would be able to choose which faction he wanted to join. At the same time, he would also be able to obtain emperor-grade cultivation techniques, martial arts, and many other benefits. This was very important to Yi Guqin, because he had finally grasped the opportunity to fight against Gu Xiaoyang and Di Haotian. No. How is this possible? How can I lose? Xinghong Crown Prince's face was twisted. He couldn't wait to ask the supremacies of the Heavenly Astral Dynasty to kill Yi Guqin. But with the white-robed supremacies and the others present, it was impossible for him to succeed. Damn it. Xinghong Crown Prince's face was twisted, and his teeth were about to shatter. Losing to Yi Guqin in front of hundreds of thousands of people, and in front of Princess Feng, she was simply like 1,000 arrows piercing his heart, causing Xinghong Crown Prince's face to be extremely twisted. How exciting, but the outcome is already decided. The white-robed supremacies smiled faintly. He wasn't a member of any dynasty, so he wouldn't be biased towards any side. At this moment, he stood in the sky and said in a clear voice, "Everyone, the champion of this preliminaries has been decided. This person is..." However, just as the white-robed old man was about to open his mouth and announce that Yi Guqin was the champion, a clear and cold voice suddenly resounded in the heavens and the earth. "The champion is Xinghong Crown Prince." As soon as this voice sounded out, everyone was shocked. The calmness on Yi Guqin's face was instantly broken. His pitch-black cold eyes carried an incomparably cold expression as he looked at the flying ship that was traversing the void in the distance. The Overlord-grade faction, the Starry Sword Pavilion, had arrived. Chapter 758. The champion is the Xinghong Crown Prince. This sentence reverberated between heaven and earth, and all the cheers stopped abruptly. Who dared to openly disrupt the order of the Prodigy Battlefield preliminaries? Even the Xinghong Crown Prince, no matter how much he hated Yi Guqin, did not dare to let the supremacies of the Starry Dynasty interfere and disrupt the order of the preliminaries, because the consequences were too serious. The Prodigy Battlefield was a grand event of the entire South Horizon region, and all the Overlord forces would participate. Even the preliminaries could not be disrupted by anyone. However, at this moment, someone actually said that the champion was the Xinghong Crown Prince, confusing the truth. Everyone's gaze turned to the source of the voice. Even the white-robed supremacy standing in the sky had a slightly solemn expression as he looked into the distance. However, when everyone saw the silver flying boat, their expressions instantly froze. That seems to be the Starry Sword Pavilion's flying boat. What? The people from the Overlord Force, the Starry Sword Pavilion, are here. But even if they're from the Starry Sword Pavilion, why did they say that the Xinghong Crown Prince is the champion? Everyone lowered their voices and discussed animatedly. The white-robed supremacy's expression also froze. The flying boat crossed the void, and a young man and woman stood on the deck. The woman wore a starry cloud robe, and her eyes were like stars. Her skin was smooth, and she was arrogant and cold. The man wore a starry cloud robe, and his eyes were filled with divine radiance. The two of them were Song Yuyao and Zhou Heng, who had rushed over from the Starfall mountain range. Behind them stood two elders with heavy auras. They were the two deacons of the Starry Sword Pavilion, and they were both supremacies of the Sky Palace. It's two of the 7 great bears of the Starry Sword Pavilion, Alcade Star Song Yuyao and Alioth Star Zhou Heng. Many of the hundreds of thousands of people exclaimed when they saw the newcomers. After all, The 7 great bears of the Starry Sword Pavilion were famous in the entire South Horizon region. The 7 prodigies representing the Starry Sword Pavilion were all outstanding in their own ways, and they were the best among the prodigies. At this moment, everyone was surprised to see that it was the 2 of them who had arrived. Normally, the overlord forces would rarely send people to this kind of preliminaries, not to mention sending prodigies and deacons. However, at that moment, the crowd's attention was not on that. Instead, it was on Song Yuyao's words. The champion was Crown Prince Xinghong. Song Yuyao. Yi Guchen stood at the peak of the Forbidden City. He raised his head slightly and looked at the airship floating in the air. Song Yuyao stood tall and straight, her dress fluttering in the wind. Her jade-like face was as arrogant and cold as before, and she viewed the people of these dynasties as ants. "You're still alive?" Song Yuyao looked at Yi Guchen. Her expression changed slightly, but it was more of a surprise. While she couldn't remember Yi Guchen's name, she had been slapped hard by Jun Xiaoyao back in the Tianhuang Plains because of Yi Guchen. As such, she remembered what Yi Guchen looked like. Song Yuyao had never imagined that Yi Guchen was still alive. And now he had even won first place in the preliminaries. Song Yuyao naturally would not let Yi Guchen become the champion. Although she felt that Yi Guchen was not a threat to her and Gu Xiaoyang, she would not let Yi Guchen become the champion and grow. "Of course I'm alive. Otherwise, how could I take Gu Xiaoyang's life?" Yi Guchen was not afraid at all. He looked at her coldly. His feud with Gu Xiaoyang was the greatest, but Song Yuyao was also unforgivable. Back in the Tianhuang Plains, the 2 of them were like gods. Song Yuyao even attacked Su Jianshi, slapping her and seriously injuring her. Song Yuyao would have to pay for this grudge eventually. Impudent. An ant dares to speak such nonsense. Junior Xiaoyang is a dragon amongst men. He can crush you to death with a single finger. Hearing Yi Guchen's words, Song Yuyao coldly rebuked. Could it be that Gu Xiaoyang's special ability was taken from this person? Zhou Heng thought to himself when he saw what happened. What is going on? Does Yi Guchen have a grudge with Gu Xiaoyang? The members of the other dynasties present were bewildered. Only the people from the Saint Origin dynasty knew the reason, and whispered to those who did not know. What? Gu Xiaoyang's special ability, the innate sword embryo, was taken from Yi Guchen? How is this possible? Being deprived of his innate ability is equivalent to being half-crippled. How can he still cultivate to such a level? Yeah. If that's the case, Yi Guchen's cultivation would be terrifying if his special ability was not taken away. He would be comparable to the 10 great young masters, right? After they heard the truth, the members of the other dynasties were extremely astounded, and their faces were filled with shock. Even Kimpo's face froze as it was his first time hearing about it. So the innate sword embryo that Gu Xiaoyang used to dominate the Nantian region was taken from Brother Yi. Oh my god. Kimpo was completely shocked. He could not imagine how powerful Yi Guchen would be if the innate sword embryo was not taken away. He might even become one of the 10 great young masters. Unfortunately, there were no ifs. However, Yi Guchen had still reached such a level even after losing the innate sword embryo. That alone was enough to make people admire him. I say that Xinghong Crown Prince is the champion of this preliminary round. Do any of you have any objections? Song Yuyao said. Although she was surprised that Yi Guchen did not die, that was all. Because in Song Yuyao's eyes, Yi Guchen was still an ant. Just like an ant, it did not matter if it was trampled to death. If it was not trampled to death, she would not mind because she did not care. This is against the rules. The white-robed reverend said hesitantly. Although he did not want to offend the Starry Sword Pavilion, it was too much to distort the truth in front of everyone. Why? Don't the Starry Sword Pavilion have the right to do that? Song Yuyao raised her eyebrows. Behind her, the 2 reverends of the Starry Sword Pavilion stood in the sky and a terrifying aura swept out. Even the white-robed reverend took 2 steps back with a pale face. The champion of the preliminary round is Xinghong Crown Prince. The white-robed reverend's face stiffened and he could only say that. Oh, by the way, this person's qualification to participate in the battlefield of prodigies is also invalid. Song Yuyao said indifferently. What? As soon as she said that, the hundreds of thousands of spectators were stunned and felt indignant for Yi Guqin. It was fine if the champion was taken away and given to Xinghong Crown Prince. But now, Yi Guqin was not even allowed to participate in the battlefield of prodigies. This is too much. Many people cursed in their hearts but did not dare to say it out loud. After all, the prestige of the Starry Sword Pavilion was there. Song Yuyao did not want Yi Guqin to get a spot in the battlefield of prodigies. She did not want him to step into the South Horizon region and be noticed by the other overlords. If there was an accident in the end and Yi Guqin entered the overlords, it would be quite troublesome. Therefore, Song Yuyao directly put an end to the possibility of Yi Guqin's rise. Her method was overbearing and vicious. Chapter 759. The hundreds of thousands of spectators were silent at this moment, unable to make a single sound. The Starry Sword Pavilion was like a mountain that weighed down on everyone's heart. Even if they felt injustice for Yi Guqin, they could only keep it in their hearts. The situation was stronger than the person. However, amidst this complete silence, a loud laugh suddenly rang out. Ha ha ha, Yi Guqin, don't you think it's funny? Do you think the heavens are messing with you? The heavily injured Xinghong Crown Prince, whose hair was disheveled, suddenly roared with laughter towards the sky. Even he didn't expect the outcome to be like this. Xinghong Crown Prince looked at Yi Guqin with ridicule and mockery. So what if you're powerful? So what if you're a dark horse? So what if you're invincible? In the end, you still have to compromise and give in to the Starry Sword Pavilion. Xinghong Crown Prince wanted to laugh. It was too satisfying. It was as if the heavens were looking after him. Zidonglai was also happy. Originally, he and Kimpo had made a bet. Kimpo had won. But now Zidonglai didn't have to give up half of his Khanate purple qi. How can this be? Su Jianshir's body trembled with anger. Her face was cold. She looked at the blood-stained young man standing silently at the top of the Forbidden City. Her heart was in pain, and her eyes were red. Yi Guqin had sacrificed a lot in his cultivation. In the preliminaries, he had swept away all his opponents and made a comeback. But in the end this was the outcome. Not only did he lose the championship because of Song Yuyao's words, he even lost the qualification to participate in the battlefield of prodigies. Yi Guqin could only compete with Gu Xiaoyang and Di Haotian if he participated in the battlefield of prodigies and joined an overlord class force. However, all his hard work had been erased by Song Yuyao's words. How ironic! How ridiculous! Ha! Yi Guqin laughed. At first it was a little bit, then it gradually became louder. In the end he burst into laughter. Even Crown Prince Xinghong stopped laughing and looked at Yi Guqin with a stunned expression. Then Yi Guqin won't go crazy from anger, right? As they looked at Yi Guqin, who was laughing towards the sky, the entire crowd was silent. They felt a kind of sadness and sadness. No one would be able to accept such a thing. Su Jianshi, Yin Wushuang, and all the disciples of the Sword Sect's tower shed tears. They were crying foul for Yi Guqin, for Yi Guqin. After a burst of laughter, Yi Guqin looked at the white-robed venerable master and said, "Senior, do you still remember what you said at the start of the preliminaries? How fair is there in the world? Martial artists of my generation use force to break all unfairness." Yi Guqin stood at the peak of the Forbidden City. His voice was like the sound of a sword, resounding through the heavens and earth. "Sai, I'm really sorry." The white-robed supremacy felt guilty. He lowered his head and sighed. "Ah, do you think you can break the injustice?" Song Yuyao sneered when she heard this. "You're destined to be trampled by junior brother Xiaoyang. This is your fate. Your Xiantian sword embryo is destined to be used by junior brother Xiaoyang. This is your fate. You're destined to be an ant that can be trampled on for the rest of your life. This is your fate." Song Yuyao's tone was cold and cruel. Her 3 sentences made the entire crowd fall into silence. That was the most heartrending words. "Shut up." Su Jianshi, Yin Wushuang, and the others shed tears as their bodies trembled. They couldn't wait to kill Song Yuyao. The Starry Sword Pavilion has gone too far. Kenpo clenched his fist, but he also felt helpless. How tyrannical. Princess Fengshi's face was filled with mockery. She had finally witnessed the tyrannical power of an overlord force. The hundreds of thousands of people were dead silent. All of their gazes were fixed on the silent young man standing on top of the forbidden city. Song Yuyao's words were too vicious. She wanted to destroy Yi Guqin's soul. It was conceivable that if Yi Guqin was oppressed and doubted him, his martial arts heart would be shaken. In the end, he might not be able to recover from the setback and become a cripple. Haha. Yi Guqin smiled faintly. Song Yuyao wanted to use this opportunity to destroy his martial heart. Her intentions were truly hateful. However, Yi Guqin's martial heart was as firm as a rock. How could Song Yuyao destroy it with just a few words? Who is qualified to judge Yi Guqin's fate? You. Yi Guqin stood alone at the peak of the forbidden city. At this moment, he was the center of attention, and it was as if the heavens and earth couldn't bend his pride. I, Yi Guqin, have never believed in the heavens, earth, or fate. I only believe in myself and the sword in my hand. If fate is unfair. Yi Guqin held the Xianming heavy sword and pointed it at Song Yuyao. Then let's fight to the end. Yi Guqin's aura gushed out as soon as he spoke. His black hair fluttered and his eyes were disdainful. An aura that was as deep as the sea gushed out, throwing the heavens and earth into chaos and changing the weather. Boom. Even the heavily injured Xinghong crown prince was blasted away by this aura and fell off the peak of the forbidden city. At this moment, no one paid attention to Xinghong crown prince. No one looked at Song Yuyao. All the martial artists' gazes landed on Yi Guqin. Their gazes landed on the youth who was unyielding and pointed his sword at the starry sword pavilion. If fate is unfair, fight to the end. Song Yuyao, get down here. Yi Guqin opened his mouth and roared furiously. It was as if he was shaking down the gods and Buddhas. His fierce fighting spirit was like a volcano boiling. His unyielding will could crush the heavens. Even Song Yuyao was shocked by this aura and her expression changed slightly. She did not expect Yi Guqin to dare to challenge her. Back in the Tianhuang Plains, Yi Guqin could not last more than a few moves against Gu Xiaoyang. If Jun Xiaoyao did not intervene in the end, Yi Guqin would have died. But now Yi Guqin dared to challenge her. Song Yuyao's face was cold, feeling that her identity was being challenged. Senior sister Song, let me take care of this aunt, Zhou Heng said with a faint smile. Song Yuyao had always been indifferent to him, and did not say much to him. Now that he finally had a chance to show off, Zhou Heng would not miss it. Then you do it. It doesn't matter if you kill him. Song Yuyao curled her lips. Okay. Zhou Heng smiled and descended from the sky. You are Yi Guqin, right? I have to say, you are indeed ridiculous. But you are too naive to think that you can take on senior sister Song. Let me take care of you. Zhou Heng smiled contemptuously. He had not broken through to the divine dwelling stage, and was only at level 9 of the spirit bridge of heaven and earth. But he knew that he was invincible among the geniuses of the various dynasties. Even the crown prince of Xinghong was no match for him. Are you sure you want to die? Yi Guqin said indifferently. The smile on Zhou Heng's face disappeared, and was replaced by a murderous intent. Are you talking to me? Zhou Heng picked his ear. Yi Guqin did not say anything. He turned his eyes to the people of the Sword Sect Tower. He suddenly said, Today I, Yi Guqin, officially withdraw from the Sword Sect Tower. From now on, what I do has nothing to do with the Sword Sect Tower. Yi Guqin shouted, his voice spreading in all directions. He said that he was withdrawing from the Sword Sect. Senior brother Yi. At this moment, the expressions of all the people from the Sword Sect's pagoda changed, and they all shouted out, Yi Guqin you. Even Yan Chang'e was a little surprised. Thank you for taking care of me in the Sword Sect Tower. But from now on I, Yi Guqin, am no longer a member of the Sword Sect Tower. Everything I do has nothing to do with you. Yi Guqin smiled. The hearts of all the spectators trembled. Yi Guqin was withdrawing from the Sword Sect at this time, because he was going to do something earth-shattering, and did not want to implicate the sect. All the spectators looked at each other, and had a premonition. Yi Guqin was going to do something earth-shattering today. Chapter 760. The entire place fell silent. No one had expected that Yi Guchen would choose to withdraw from the sect at this juncture. What did this mean? Many people didn't dare to think further. They could only watch nervously. Something big was about to happen today. No, Yi Guchen, I won't allow you to withdraw from the sect. Yan Wushuang's eyes were red as she shouted. It was hard to imagine that the young girl, who always had an indifferent expression, was on the verge of tears at this moment. Her delicate body was trembling, and her gaze was fixed on Yi Guchen as she shouted loudly, Shuang'er, thank you for taking care of me in the Sword Sect's Pagoda Forest. Yi Guchen's tone became gentle as he looked at Yan Wushuang. Although Yi Guchen didn't have a good relationship with Yan Wushuang in the beginning, all the troubles disappeared when he called her Shuang. No, Shuang'er won't allow you to withdraw from the sect. Yan Wushuang finally cried. She bit her lips and her heart felt like it was being stabbed by a knife. She knew that this unyielding youth was withdrawing because he didn't want to be a burden to the Sword Sect's Pagoda Forest. But it was also because of this that Yan Wushuang knew that Yi Guchen would do something shocking. It might even endanger her life. Su Jianshi's eyes were also filled with tears, but she didn't say anything because she wasn't a disciple of the Sword Sect's Pagoda Forest. Silly boy, I will be by your side no matter what you do. Su Jianshi didn't say a word, but she had already made up her mind. Even if Yi Guchen wanted to go against the Starry Sword Pavilion, Su Jianshi would still stand by his side. Senior brother Yi. All the disciples of the Sword Sect's Pagoda Forest gnashed their teeth. The female disciples of the inner court shed tears. They couldn't bear to see such a sad scene. The male disciples clenched their fists and held back their tears. After going through so much, Yi Guchen had become the benchmark in the hearts of all the disciples of the Sword Sect's Pagoda Forest. Since that's the case, I'll also withdraw from the sect. Feng Manlu smiled faintly as he said casually. Lord Feng Manlu. All the disciples and elders of the Sword Sect's Pagoda Forest were stunned. Is Wind Sweeping Building withdrawing as well? Manlu you. Even Yan Chang'e was shocked. Senior Feng, you don't have to. Yi Guchen hesitated. He did not expect that Wind Sweeping Building would leave the sect with him. Haha. How can I let my disciple face everything alone? Feng Manlu didn't seem to mind at all. Even though Yi Guchen was facing an overlord force, his handsome face remained calm. Yi Guchen, do whatever you want to do. Master, will be behind you. Feng Manlu stood high in the sky with his hands clasped behind his back. His clothes fluttered in the wind, making him look handsome and warm. Behind you, there are 4 simple words. It was plain and ordinary, but it was enough to move people. After all, Yi Guchen was up against an overlord-class force. In the face of such an existence, Feng Manlu was not afraid at all. He still chose to stand behind his disciple. How bold and courageous was that? What an admirable pair of master and disciple. Most of the surrounding 400,000 to 500,000 martial artists were moved and sighed in their hearts. Yi Guchen had a complicated look on his face. He recalled that during the exchange, Feng Manlu had also asked Yi Guchen to do whatever he wanted. He would take care of the rest. Now Feng Manlu was still doing the same in the face of an overlord-class force. Feng Qian. No, master, thank you. Yi Guchen paused and cupped his hands solemnly at Feng Manlu. Previously, Feng Manlu and Yi Guchen were master and disciple in name. However, Yi Guchen had never addressed Feng Manlu as master. After all, he was the sword demon who had dominated the world. In this world, how many people were qualified to be addressed as master by him? At this moment, Feng Manlu had truly gained Yi Guchen's respect, and had changed the way he addressed him as master. Haha. Feng Manlu chuckled but did not say anything. That pair of blind and empty eyes vaguely revealed a sense of gratification. Then I want to leave the sect too. Some disciples of the Sword Sect Pagoda Forest could not help but speak up. Yi Guchen and Feng Manlu, the 2 core disciples of the Sword Sect Pagoda Forest, had left the sect. What was the point of them staying? All of you shut up. Yan Chang'e shouted coldly. Yi Guchen and Feng Manlu had left the sect because they did not want to implicate the Sword Sect Pagoda Forest. If they also left the sect, wouldn't they be letting down Yi Guchen's sacrifice? Manlu, then I. Yan Chang'e was about to speak, but was interrupted by Feng Manlu. Chang'e, The thousands of disciples of the sword sect Pagoda Forest still need your leadership. Let us face them alone. Feng Manlu smiled faintly. Sigh. Yen Chang'e clenched his fists tightly. He still had the responsibility of settling the thousands of disciples of the sword sect Pagoda Forest. He could not act recklessly. Is it really impossible? Yi Guchen, Uncle Feng. Yen Wushuang's delicate body swayed and her face turned pale. The two most important people to her had left the sect. She did not know what would happen next. A disciple of the sword sect Pagoda Forest knelt on the ground with red eyes and cupped his hands. Farewell, Sword King of the sword sect. The words were filled with affection. This was the last greeting to Yi Guchen and Feng Manlu. Farewell, Sword King of the sword sect. The other disciples knelt down and cupped their hands. Farewell, Sword King of the sword sect. Chu Qingqi knelt down. Yixia knelt down. Jiling knelt down. Even Qing He Gu Tua and the other elders bowed and cupped their hands. Farewell, Sword King of the sword sect. These elders and disciples that Yi Guchen was extremely familiar with knelt down one by one and respectfully sent the master and disciple duo off. This also meant that Yi Guchen and Feng Manlu had officially left the sword sect Pagoda Forest. The hundreds of thousands of spectators were all moved. Some women even shed tears. How many sects had this kind of friendship? Just as everyone was immersed in this emotion, an ear-piercing and discordant voice sounded. TSK TSK, what a touching master and disciple relationship. But so what? Yi Guchen, are you ready to die? Zhou Hing sneered. Yi Guchen's previous words had completely offended him. Come, use your full strength. Otherwise you'll be miserable. Yi Guchen restrained his emotions and pointed his Xianming heavy sword at the ground. As long as he defeated Zhou Heng, Song Yuyao would definitely not stand by and watch. At that time, a cold glint flashed across Yi Guchen's eyes. One move is enough to kill you. Zhou Heng sneered when he saw this. Although Song Yuyao was already Gu Xiaoyang's woman, no man would not like to show off his strength in front of a woman. Zhou Heng was the same. He wanted Song Yuyao to know that he was not inferior to Gu Xiaoyang. Genesis Star Fist. Zhou Heng punched out, accompanied by the phenomenon of stars exploding. It was as if the stars in the sky had appeared to support the power of his punch. God-slaying sword art Yama. Yi Guchen's eyes were cold and his battle intent was boiling. He and the Starry Sword Pavilion were destined to have a death feud. And now he had left the sect and was alone. Since that was the case, what was there to be afraid of? He would fight with all his might. Kill. Boom. The battle erupted again. This battle was between the Starry Sword Pavilion's genius and Yi Guchen. Chapter 761. It was the battle between Zhou Heng and Yi Guchen. In the eyes of the spectators, it was an unfair battle. The difference in their backgrounds was too great. Zhou Heng was one of the 7 great bears of the Starry Sword Pavilion, an overlord force. Even though Zhou Heng was the weakest of the 7 great bears, his cultivation, experience, ability, and methods were far superior to those of the other dynasties. Yi Guchen, on the other hand, was from a low-level dynasty. The difference in their backgrounds was like the difference between heaven and earth. There was no comparison at all. Therefore, even though the spectators sympathized with Yi Guchen, they felt pity for him. However, they still did not think that Yi Guchen could turn the tables and defeat Zhou Heng. Rumble. A great battle broke out at the top of the Forbidden City. Zhou Heng and Yi Guchen clashed. After one blow, the two of them retreated. Zhou Heng was a little surprised. He looked at Yi Guchen and said, "Biming family's swordsmanship. It seems that you have a little fortuitous encounter. However, if you think that you can challenge the Starry Sword Pavilion with this, you are too foolish." Zhou Heng punched out again. His fist shone brightly, and was accompanied by a celestial phenomenon. The Yuanchen Astral Fist was a supreme-grade king-level fist technique of the Starry Sword Pavilion. Although the Starry Sword Pavilion mainly focused on the sword, they also had many martial arts techniques. They did not just focus on swordsmanship. Who is the foolish one? Yi Guchen's eyes glinted coldly. His feet flashed as he used the shadow step. His body left an afterimage as the Xianming heavy sword slashed through the air. Sword chi surged and turned into a string of hurricane lilies. God-slaying sword technique, Paramitha. Zhou Heng's expression changed slightly. He did not dare to face this sword with his bare hands. With a flip of his wrist, a bright silver sword appeared in his hand. Alioth sword. Swoosh. The Alioth sword slashed out a bright silver sword light and collided with Yi Guqin's killer move. The sound of the collision was so loud that it broke everyone's eardrums. Zhou Heng's Alioth sword was made of metal from an ancient meteorite. Its quality was excellent, and it had reached the pinnacle of supreme-grade mystical runes. The next step was the Heavenly Tribulation divine weapon. On the other hand, although he didn't know what material Yi Guqin's Xianming heavy sword was made of, its only characteristic was its toughness. In terms of toughness, even the blood prison sword from the Baiming family could not compare to it. After all, even the blood hell sword had been shattered. Clang, clang, clang. The two figures continued to crisscross as they engaged in close combat. What stunned everyone present was that Yi Guqin was actually able to exchange blows with Zhou Heng. This was simply inconceivable to everyone. How could this be? The pupils of the Xinghong crown prince with disheveled hair and bloodstains all over his body were opened wide, and he was filled with disbelief. It was one thing for Yi Guqin to defeat him, but now, he was actually able to contend with the 7 great bears of the Starry Universe Sword Pavilion. Could it be that today, Yi Guqin, you can really create a miracle? If that's the case, I might really fall for you. Princess Phoenix Dawn was also surprised. The reason why she was so fond of Yi Guqin was because she wanted to take revenge on Yin Wushuang. But the more she understood, the more shocked she was by Yi Guqin's performance. It was rare to see such an outstanding man. You do have some tricks up your sleeve, but if that's all, then you'll lose. Zhou Heng frowned. He didn't want to drag this out for too long. After all, as a sky pride of an overlord force, it wouldn't be good for him to fight with a sky pride of a low-ranked dynasty for so long. Starry Universe Sword. Zhou Heng finally executed the Starry Universe Sword Pavilion's sword technique. As one of the 4 sword pavilions, the Starry Universe Sword Pavilion's sword technique was naturally exquisite. Zhou Heng's feet moved as if he was stepping on the stars. He took 7 steps and created 7 afterimages. At the same time, he struck out 7 times with his sword. In an instant, the 7 swords merged into one and turned into a dazzling sword ray that slashed down at Yi Guqin's head. Yi Guqin's eyes flashed as he poured his true energy into the Xianming heavy sword and swung it up. Immortal murdering sword technique, immortal fall. Sword chi gushed out and swept out in all directions. Countless terrifying phantoms of fallen immortals appeared. Boom. When the 2 ultimate moves collided, Yi Guqin felt an extremely vigorous power of the stars passing through the sword and into his body. Yi Guqin activated his sea of vital energy, and golden true energy surged out and destroyed the power of the stars. On the other side, Zhou Heng also took a few steps back. His expression changed completely. Although Zhou Heng didn't use his full strength, the Starry Universe sword technique wasn't something an ordinary sky pride could withstand. This brat is a little strange, Zhou Heng thought. At this moment, Yi Guqin charged forward once again. His eyes were swallowed by the color of blood. A terrifying murderous aura gushed out from his body, as if it could slash the heavens and destroy the earth. Azura Sword Dao. This is Sword Dao. Zhou Heng's heart skipped a beat. He hadn't watched the battle before, so he naturally didn't know Yi Guqin's moves. He actually comprehended the sword principle. Even Song Yuyao's jade-like face revealed surprise once again. Some sky prides from other dynasties might be able to comprehend Sword Dao. However, comprehending Sword Dao was not something an ordinary sword cultivator could do. Even Song Yuyao and Zhou Heng hadn't comprehended Sword Dao yet. Even Gu Xiaoyang had only comprehended the starry Sword Dao recently. This person can't be left alive. Song Yuyao's eyes flashed coldly. Yi Guqin, who had been like an ant in her eyes, now gave her a sense of danger. So what? Formless Sword Dao. When Zhou Heng saw this, he snorted coldly, but there was a trace of seriousness in his eyes. Even though Yi Guqin was still inferior in his eyes, The fact that he could comprehend Sword Dao meant that Yi Guchen wasn't an ordinary sky pride. Therefore, Zhou Heng also displayed his Sword Dao. Formless Sword Dao. Yi Guchen's eyes were indifferent. Formless Sword Dao was only an ordinary Sword Dao. It was not bad among ordinary Sword Daos, but it obviously couldn't compare to the Supreme Sword Dao. Not to mention the Supreme Sword Dao of Azura. 18 levels of Azura Blood Sea. Yi Guchen activated his sword domain, and the blood-red sword radiance spread out like an endless blood tide. The 18 levels of blood prison broke free and rushed toward Zhou Heng. Formless and formless, traceless and boundless, without a shadow or trace. Zhou Heng moved, and his body seemed to turn into a gust of wind, unpredictable. At the same time, he held the Alioth sword, and the sword momentum became erratic. However, in this fleeting movement, there was an extremely sharp sword intent hidden. This was the Formless Sword Dao. It was formless and unpredictable, and it seized the opportunity to deliver a fatal blow. The unpredictable sword chi broke through the blood tide. At a certain moment, Zhou Heng suddenly exploded, and the true chi of the 9th stage spirit bridge of heaven and earth surged out and poured into the Alioth sword. An extremely sharp and dazzling sword chi, which seemed to be able to cut through the air, stabbed toward Yi Guchen from behind. "I'll kill you in one move." Zhou Heng smirked. However, Yi Guchen seemed to have expected this. He raised his heavy sword, and with the help of the Azura Sword Dao, a terrifying sword chi burst out. Life fall. Yi Guchen twisted his body and slashed out with his heavy sword, colliding with Zhou Heng's ultimate move. In an instant, heaven and earth shook, and the sword radiance illuminated the 9 heavens. Chapter 762. Boom. At the top of the Forbidden City, countless sword chi exploded in the void, spreading out along with the violent sword essence. Under everyone's shocked gaze, a figure flew out. It was Zhou Heng. How is this possible? Crown Prince Xinghong, Zidonglai, Gong Mingba, and the others from before, such as Vermilion Bird Jade, Yu Wentian, Yu Wenji and the others, their eyes almost popped out of their sockets. Who would have thought that the one to be forced back was the Starry Sword Pavilion's prodigy? Thud. 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 Zhou Heng took a dozen steps back, each step deep into the ground. With a spurt, Zhou Heng spat out a mouthful of blood. A set of silver armor appeared on his body. However, the chest area of the silver armor was covered in cracks that radiated outwards. If he hadn't used the silver armor at the last moment, Zhou Heng might have been seriously injured by Yi Guchen's sword. He stared at Yi Guchen with a sharp gaze. What kind of sword technique is that? Zhou Heng was shocked. If Yi Guchen had used the god-slaying sword and the deity-slaying sword, he could still accept it. However, the life-fall sword had thoroughly shocked Zhou Heng. Such a sword technique was unique even in the Starry Sword Pavilion. It was a core sword technique. This kid is special. Maybe we can capture him and force him to tell us the sword technique. In the sky, a venerable realm deacon of the Starry Sword Pavilion said. Song Yuyao looked at the battle below with a gloomy face. She said, Zhou Heng, what are you waiting for? Suppress him. Zhou Heng's face turned ugly when he sensed Song Yuyao's impatience and disdain. He wanted to show off in front of Song Yuyao, but he ended up in such a sorry state. At the thought of this, Zhou Heng looked at Yi Guchen with an even colder gaze. I was careless just now. Again. Zhou Heng's 9th stage spirit bridge of heaven and earth aura burst out. He soared into the sky and his vigorous genuine chi surged out, increasing his power by 9 times. His strength had reached the peak of the heaven and earth spirit bridge, so he could instantly increase his combat strength by 9 times. Thousand Stars Pilgrimage Sword Technique. Zhou Heng finally used the Star Universe Sword Pavilion's Emperor-level sword art. Following his angry roar, the Alioth sword stabbed into the void. Streaks of sword light shone like stars. In the blink of an eye, Zhou Heng seemed to have stabbed thousands of times. The sword lights froze beside Zhou Heng, shining with deadly killing intent like stars. That's the Imperial-level sword technique of the Starry Sword Pavilion. Could it be that it wants to end the universe with a single strike? Around the forbidden Purple Mountain, 400 to 500,000 people stood and looked at the top of the mountain. Zhou Heng had even used his Emperor-level swordsmanship. It could be said that Zhou Heng wanted to decide the outcome of the battle with one strike. Kill. At a certain moment, Zhou Heng suddenly drew his sword. As he swung his sword, the sword lights around him seemed to have sensed something and followed his sword towards Yi Guqin. His aura was extremely strong, and the sword light whistled. It was as if thousands of meteors were falling from the sky. It was said that when the Thousand Stars pilgrimage sword technique was cultivated to the highest level, one could unleash thousands of swords in an instant. That kind of power was truly earth-shattering. It could instantly pierce a 10,000-foot-tall mountain into a sieve. Although Zhou Heng had not fully mastered the Thousand Stars pilgrimage sword technique, its power was still shocking. Even the Xinghong crown prince would probably be severely injured if he took on this attack. Yi Guqin's eyes also had a hint of seriousness in them. He would never underestimate any opponent, let alone the prodigies of the Starry Sword Pavilion. Yi Guqin suddenly raised his hand. Golden true sword qi surged out and turned into a beautiful golden sword lotus. The power of the 108-leaf reincarnation sword lotus was much stronger than before. When it was thrown out, it collided with Zhou Heng's emperor-level sword technique. Rumble. It was as if lightning had struck. In the void, countless sword qi collided and annihilated each other. The golden sword lotus exploded in an instant. Endless sword qi collided with the Thousand Stars pilgrimage sword technique's sword lights. A series of explosions rang out as unparalleled sword qi rippled out. Yi Guqin was forced back. Traces of blood seeped from the corner of his mouth. On the other hand, the silver armor on Zhou Heng's body had been completely shattered by the collision. He spat out another mouthful of blood. Both sides were injured in this collision. However, anyone with a discerning eye could see that Yi Guqin actually had the upper hand. He even used an emperor-level sword technique, but he still can't suppress Yi Guqin? At this moment, the hearts of all the spectators trembled. It was as if thunder had exploded in their heads. Yi Guqin could contend with a prodigy from an overlord faction. Even if Zhou Heng was the weakest of the 7 great bears, he was still far stronger than the prodigies from the top dynasties. However, those who had witnessed the sword duel of saber weren't too surprised. After all, Gu Zun's strength was almost on par with a prodigy from an overlord faction. If Yi Guqin could defeat Gu Zun, it wasn't too surprising that he could contend with Zhou Heng. If he unleashed his full strength, Zhou Heng might not be stronger than Gu Zun. Zhou Heng wiped the blood from the corner of his mouth. His eyes were cold like a storm. He didn't expect that he couldn't suppress Yi Guqin, even after using an emperor-level sword technique. Trash. You can't even compare to junior brother Xiaoyang's finger. Song Yuyao cursed inwardly with an ugly expression. Zhou Heng was a disgrace to the Starry Universe Sword Pavilion. This can't go on. Zhou Heng's expression was cold. In his eyes, strange starlight began to surge and spread out like a tide. Zhou Heng is going to use his special ability. Seeing this scene, some martial artists cried out involuntarily. Only prodigies of 7th grade and above possessed special abilities. Every innate divine ability was unique and possessed great power. It's your honor to make me use my special ability. Now prepare to die. Zhou Heng's killing intent sword. Yi Guqin had humiliated him in front of Song Yuyao and the hundreds of thousands of spectators. Zhou Heng's only way to wash away his humiliation was to kill Yi Guqin. Boom. Starlight surged in Zhou Heng's eyes. This was his special ability, the magnetite starlight. It was as fast as light and extremely powerful. Swoosh. Swoosh. 2 deadly beams of magnetite starlight shot out from Zhou Heng's eyes and shot toward Yi Guqin. Yi Guqin reacted quickly and blocked with his Xianming broadsword. However, to Yi Guqin's surprise, the 2 beams of magnetite starlight turned and shot toward Yi Guqin from the side. Yi Guqin raised his eyebrows and moved to the side with rippling subtle steps. However, the beams of magnetite starlight still grazed Yi Guqin's waist, causing blood to spurt out. Yi Guqin, Su Jianshi, Yan Wushuang and the others' hearts tightened. Yi Guqin frowned and ignored the pain. His powerful physical strength caused the wound to quickly heal. Next, Zhou Heng's eyes shone with divine light. Wherever he looked, starlight burst out and charged toward Yi Guqin. Yi Guqin could only dodge with rippling subtle steps. Sigh, what a pity. Yi Guqin was originally a grade 7 prodigy. If Gu Xiaoyang hadn't taken his innate sword core, he would have been able to suppress Zhou Heng. Some people shook their heads and sighed when they saw this. They were both grade 7 prodigies, so it was important to have an innate ability. Yi Guqin had the innate sword core, so Zhou Heng wouldn't be able to suppress him so easily with the magnetite starlight. Heh, now you've become a mouse that only knows how to hide. But do you think you can stall for time like this? Zhou Heng sneered and activated the magnetite starlight in his eyes again. The divine light of the magnetite star surged out in an instant, splitting into countless rays of light that filled the surroundings, as if forming a domain. Magnetite starlight seal. Chapter 763. Zhou Heng's magnetic star divine light was not only powerful, but it could also transform into a star magnetic field that could imprison a part of the world. At this moment, countless rays of starlight intertwined in the void at the top of the Forbidden City like a spider web, imprisoning the entire area. Not only that, but there was also an inexplicable magnetic force in this domain that restricted Yi Guqin's movements, causing his movements to slow down. The magnetic star divine light not only had the destructive power of starlight, but it also had the power to imprison. Is this Zhou Heng's special ability? The hundreds of thousands of people present were shocked as they looked at the starry domain that enveloped the entire mountaintop. Some of the heaven prides from the various empires were even wondering what would happen if they were trapped in such a domain. There was only one result after much thought, and that was to be completely imprisoned and tortured to death. The disciples of the Sword Sect's Forest of Pagodas all felt their hearts rise to their throats as they broke out in a cold sweat for Yi Guqin. Zhou Heng has even displayed his starry domain. It seems this battle is about to end. Song Yuyao's eyes were calm and contemptuous. Although Yi Guqin's strength had slightly exceeded her expectations, the battle had already ended. However, in the current situation, the dust had almost settled. Victory and defeat could be decided. On the top of the Forbidden City, Yi Guqin's body was imprisoned in the starry domain, and his range of movement was extremely limited. Countless rays of light intertwined around him like lasers, and the slightest touch could cut off his limbs. Are you still going to struggle in vain? Zhou Heng had become calm, and the corners of his mouth curved into a victorious smile. He was extremely confident in his means. He knew that there were very few people below the divine dwelling stage who could break his starry domain. If one wanted to forcefully break it, they would need to at least exceed his cultivation level. Although he did not know why Yi Guqin was able to contend against the Heaven and Earth Spirit Bridge at the life and death threshold, Zhou Heng believed that no matter how strong Yi Guqin was, it was impossible for him to surpass him. Yi Guqin's situation was very bad. He used wave-like subtle steps, and his figure was like a willow in the wind or duckweed in the water. Outside the starry field, Zhou Heng continued to release starry divine light to attack Yi Guqin. Yi Guqin's footsteps flitted as he evaded the attacks. At the same time, he released his powerful spiritual perception to search for the flaws in the astral domain. But in the eyes of outsiders, Yi Guqin was just dodging in a sorry state. It's already pretty good that Yi Guqin was able to counterattack and defeat the Xinghong Crown Prince. However, compared to the Overlord-class forces, he's still lacking. Everyone present felt that it was a pity. They were also looking forward to seeing Yi Guqin turn the tables and crush the prodigies of the Starry Sword Pavilion. But it seemed that it was impossible. There's always someone who can subdue Yi Guqin. Finally, someone can subdue Yi Guqin. Not everyone was on Yi Guqin's side. The Vermilion Bird Jade, Yu Wentian, Yu Wenji Wang Chun, and the others were happy to see this scene. Brother Yi, things aren't looking good. Kinpo was also sweating in his heart. Princess Phoenix Dawn was also paying close attention. Within the astral domain, Yi Guqin's figure shifted as he evaded the attacks. However, his speed was still suppressed by the magnetic field, so he couldn't unleash his full potential. But that powerful spiritual perception had already penetrated into the depths of the astral domain. Yi Guqin was looking for a flaw so that he could break it with one strike. Don't waste your time. If the domain formed by a special ability can be broken so easily, then it wouldn't be qualified to be called a special ability. Zhou Heng shook his head and smiled when he saw Yi Guchen trying to find a flaw. In his opinion, Yi Guchen was just making a last-ditch effort. Is that so? Yi Guchen revealed a faint smile. He had finally found a few key points to break the domain. What he needed to do next was to break it with one strike. Boom! Within Yi Guchen's body, the golden sea of qi was pushed to the extreme. His eyes flashed with a sharp sword light. Yi Guchen held the sword with both hands and poured in his true qi. A sharp sword aura that could destroy everything was brewing. What kind of sword technique is this? Zhou Heng's heart skipped a beat. He had a bad feeling. Duga's 9 swords, sword breaking style. Yi Guchen didn't activate the man and sword becoming one. Even so, the 9 Duga's 9 swords was still Yi Guchen's most perfect sword technique. As for the sword breaking style, it had the terrifying power to break all techniques with one strike. An extremely resplendent sword light swept out from the tip of the sword. Yi Guchen swung his sword 5 times in a row. 4 of the sword beams landed on the 4 weak points of the astral domain, followed by 4 loud explosions. Boom! The entire astral domain shattered under the shocked gazes of Zhou Heng and all the spectators. The domain turned into countless specks of light and dissipated into the void. In the end, the flawless 5th sword slashed down towards Zhou Heng with a force that could split the heavens and split the earth, piercing through the clouds. Impossible! Zhou Heng's face twisted in horror. How could his astral domain be broken? In a moment of desperation, Zhou Heng activated the magnetite star divine light in his eyes again. 2 blazing beams of light shot out and collided with the sword light. What made everyone speechless again was Yi Guchen's sword-breaking style seemed to be able to break through everything. Even the divine light of the magnetite star was cut in half by the sword light. One strike to break all techniques. Under the gaze of hundreds of thousands of spectators, Zhou Heng was sent flying while vomiting blood. A bloody hole appeared on his body as he fell heavily to the ground. Tears of blood flowed from his eyes. It was obvious that he had used too much of his divine power. Yi Guchen's figure looked exceptionally straight and slender among the scattered starlight spots in the sky. His expression was indifferent. Zhou Heng collapsed on the ground and vomited blood. He was severely injured and looked as miserable as a dog. At this moment, the entire place was silent. The hundreds of thousands of spectators were stunned and unable to make a sound. Only the sound of saliva being swallowed could be heard. Some cultivators gulped and said with a dry voice, "Yi Guchen won?" There were even some people who felt that it was too illusory, too unreal. Impossible, this is impossible. How can Yi Guchen be so strong? How can he defeat the Starry Sword Pavilion's genius? Zhu Keiyu's face was completely pale as she shook her head. Yu Wentian, Yu Wenji, Wang Chen and the others also had dead expressions. Just how strong was Yi Guchen? The Xinghong Crown Prince's face was ferocious and the veins on his neck were bulging. He didn't expect that even the Starry Sword Pavilion's genius would fail. As for Kempo, Princess Fengxi and the others, their eyes lit up. Yi Guchen had once again exceeded their expectations. He won. The disciples of the Sword Sect's Forest of Pagodas were so excited that tears welled up in their eyes. This trash! Song Yuyao's eyes were cold as she cursed in her heart. Zhou Heng had completely embarrassed the Starry Sword Pavilion. The 2 Martial Highness deacons harumphed coldly with cold expressions. In an instant, 2 extremely powerful auras of martial supremacies pressed down on Yi Guchen like the blazing sun. Yi Guchen's body shook and his eyes turned sharp. So these are the sovereigns of the Starry Sword Pavilion? If you attack, Yi Guchen will also take it. Although he was suppressed by the sovereigns, Yi Guchen's back was still straight. Hearing this, the surrounding crowd became noisy and disgusted. Zhou Heng's attack was already very unfair to Yi Guchen. If the sovereigns of the Starry Sword Pavilion bullied the weak, then they were really shameless. Who dares to bully my disciple? Feng Manlu also took a step forward and neutralized the auras of the 2 sovereigns. The 2 sovereigns furrowed their brows. Although Feng Manlu was only at the 7th level of the Divine Dwelling Realm, he gave them a faint sense of threat, which surprised them. However, at this moment, a deep voice sounded. A deep and cold voice came from afar again. Yi Guchen, You are really bold. You even dare to go against the Starry Sword Pavilion. No wonder you have the courage to kill the people of the Dongfang family. Everyone looked over and was instantly shocked. Another overlord force had arrived. Chapter 764. Before the first wave subsided, another wave came. Everyone was still stuck in the shocking scene of Yi Guchen defeating Zhou Heng. However, right at this moment, a flying ship flew over from afar. It was another overlord force that had arrived. It's the Dongfang family. The group of people looked over, and all of them were shocked and surprised. They didn't know what had happened. Logically speaking, the preliminaries shouldn't have alerted the overlord forces. But now the overlord forces had arrived one after another. There were 4 people standing on the flying boat. A young man and a young woman, and 2 old men. The young girl was dressed in a purple gold robe. She was extremely beautiful. At this moment, she narrowed her beautiful eyes and looked at Yi Guchen, who was at the top of the Forbidden City. The red-robed man beside her had an oppressive aura. He was like the sun, emitting a scorching aura. They were Dongfang Shuri and Dongfang Ziyun from the Dongfang family's side branch. The 2 old men behind them were also sovereigns from the side branch. The Dongfang family's side branch is here too. The sun rises from the east. They're the strongest among the 5 overlord families. I heard that the Heavenly God Sword sect only succeeded with the help of the Dongfang family and other forces. But judging from the Dongfang family's tone, did Yi Guchen kill someone from the Dongfang family? The arrival of the Dongfang family was shocking. But what was even more shocking was Dongfang Shuri's words. Yi Guchen actually killed someone from the Dongfang family. Dongfang Ziyun. Yi Guchen furrowed his brows as he looked at Dongfang Ziyun. He didn't expect the Dongfang family to come at the right time. The Dongfang family had to come at this critical moment. It was one disaster after another. So you're Yi Guchen. I thought you were from the Baiming family, but it seems like you've only received some inheritance. But since you had the courage to kill brother Dongfang Hong, you'll die today. Dongfang Ziyun's eyes were cold. That's right. Anyone who kills someone from the Dongfang family has no way out. Dongfang Shuri said coldly. As soon as these words were spoken, everyone was shocked. Everyone's eyes were fixed on Yi Guchen. A prodigy from a low-level empire had killed a disciple from an overlord-level force? Feng Manlu frowned slightly. The expressions of all the elders and disciples of the Sword Sect's Forest of Pagodas froze, and they were unsightly to the extreme. Yi Guchen had already offended the Starry Universe Sword Pavilion. Even with wind-sweeping buildings protection, he still had a slim chance of survival. Now that the Dongfang family had arrived, they too wanted Yi Guchen dead. Who could stop the condemnation of 2 transcendent powers? Haha, Yi Guchen, the heavens want you dead today. The Xinghong Crown Prince laughed. He laughed very happily. Who would have thought that Yi Guchen, who was supposed to be the champion of the qualifiers, would end up in such a state? Dongfang Ziyun, don't you know better than me how Dongfang Hong died? In the face of the Dongfang family's pressure, Yi Guchen remained fearless. I saw it with my own eyes. Don't tell me you still want to deny it? Dongfang Ziyun's eyes flashed with coldness. Dongfang Hong had actually died indirectly in her hands, but Dongfang Shuri naturally wouldn't believe Yi Guchen's words. Ziyun, there's no need to talk to him anymore. Whoever kills the Dongfang family, no matter who it is, must die, let alone an ant from a low-level dynasty. Dongfang Shuri said calmly. Just as the Dongfang family was about to attack, a calm voice was heard. Friend from the Dongfang family, let the Starry Universe Sword Pavilion deal with this person. He won't live today. The person who spoke was naturally Song Yuyao. She wasn't speaking for Yi Guchen, but for Yi Guchen's defeat of Zhou Heng in front of everyone. If the Starry Universe Sword Pavilion didn't attack, they would lose all their face. All right. Dongfang Shuri nodded. After all, his purpose of coming here was to kill Yi Guchen. It didn't matter who killed him. Oh, the honorables of the Starry Universe Sword Pavilion are going to attack. Yi Guchen's lips curled into a mocking smile. Little bastard, you're not worthy. The 2 honorables of the Starry Universe Sword Pavilion heard, and their faces darkened. They were the deacons of the Starry Universe Sword Pavilion. If they really attacked Yi Guchen today, even if they killed Yi Guchen, their reputation would be tarnished. So, Yi Guchen's eyes turned sharp as he looked up at Song Yuyao. Song Yuyao, get down here. Yi Guchen pointed his sword at Song Yuyao, a cold murderous intent flashing in his eyes. Zhou Tong was just a roadblock, an outsider. Yi Guchen's real target was Song Yuyao. He's going to challenge the pride of the Starry Universe Sword Pavilion again? The rest of the people felt their scalps go numb. Today, Yi Guchen crushed the crown prince of the Great Star Dynasty and defeated Zhou Heng of the Seven Great Bears. Now he was going to challenge Song Yuyao again. If even Song Yuyao was defeated by Yi Guchen, then 2 of the 7 Great Bears would be defeated by Yi Guchen. Yi Guchen would undoubtedly create a legend. If news of this spread, Yi Guchen would amaze the entire Nantian region. Of course, the premise was that Yi Guchen could escape death today. Song Yuyao's face changed when Yi Guchen pointed his sword at her. It was not because of fear, but because of anger. She was the pride of the Starry Universe Sword Pavilion, but someone dared to provoke her. Since you're courting death, then I'll kill you on behalf of junior brother Xiaoyang. Murderous intent surged in Song Yuyao's eyes. No matter what, Yi Guchen was the host of the Khanate Sword Embryo. If he was killed, the Khanate Sword Embryo would be completely refined by Gu Xiaoyang. Song Yuyao floated down, her eyes cold. With a flip of her hand, a slender jade sword fell into her hand. The Alcade Sword. Thousand Shadow Star God Sword. Song Yuyao released the aura of a 9th stage spirit bridge of heaven and earth, and used her ultimate move. In an instant, Song Yuyao seemed to have pointed out 1,000 swords, which merged into one and turned into a giant starry sword light. Emperor-level sword art. Feeling the power of the sword art, everyone around was shocked. Song Yuyao used an emperor-level sword art right off the bat. Obviously, she wanted to kill Yi Guchen as easily as crushing dry weeds. Great Void Sword Wave, Void Destruction. Yi Guchen activated the edgeless sword intent and used the Great Void Sword Wave. The space shook, and the sword wave spread out like a wave, colliding with the starry sword light. The starry sword light broke through the sword wave. Although it was slightly weaker, it still fell on Yi Guchen. Yama. Yi Guchen released the Azura Sword Dao again, using the Yama sword technique. The blood-red sword light split the sky and collided with the starry sword light. Yi Guchen's body shook, and he retreated a few steps, blood flowing from the corner of his mouth. After all, he had fought several battles in a row. Song Yuyao was waiting for him to be exhausted. In comparison, Song Yuyao had the upper hand. However, Yi Guchen's physical body was strong, and coupled with his ultimate sea of qi, this kind of consumption injury was not a big problem. Song Yuyao frowned slightly when she saw that she had failed to kill Yi Guchen with her sword. Back in the Tianhuang plain, Yi Guchen was like an ant that she could crush with a flick of her finger. But now, he blocked her sword that was comparable to an emperor-level sword art. You're done. Next, it's my turn. Yi Guchen slowly raised his sword, and a strange sword concept spread out. Swoosh. Yi Guchen attacked. It was a very slow sword, but it made everyone's hair stand on end. One sword, merciful heavens. Chapter 765. Yi Guchen's attack was very slow. It was so slow that everyone could clearly see the trajectory of Yi Guchen's attack. But it was this slow attack that made all the spectators' scalps go numb as they felt an extreme sense of danger. Pathos of Heaven was Yi Guchen's self-created sword move. Although it was only one move, it didn't hinder its power. Especially the special sword concept that it carried. It was sad and poignant, causing one's heart to waver. It had the effect of affecting one's consciousness and soul. The strength of this effect varied from person to person. For someone like Gu Zun, who was cold and unfeeling, the pathos of heaven concept couldn't affect him. But Song Yuyao was different. She was a woman after all. Most women valued love and would naturally resonate with it. Especially Song Yuyao, who loved Gu Xiaoyang. Gu Xiaoyang, on the other hand, had brought the innate sword embryo to the Misty Sword Pavilion to meet Yi Songyue. This caused cracks to appear in Song Yuyao's heart, and made her feel sour. Yi Guchen's attack was undoubtedly Song Yuyao's nemesis. Song Yuyao felt as if she could see herself in Gu Xiaoyang when she sensed the sorrowful sword concept. In the outside world, a small number of people who weren't affected were stunned to see that Song Yuyao had a trace of infatuation on her face. She had no intention of dodging at all. Song Yuyao, wake up. At this moment, the two deacons in the sky suddenly shouted when they saw the situation. Song Yuyao instantly woke up, and immediately sensed that the sword light was already in front of her. Heavenly Star Garment. Song Yuyao screamed as her expression changed. On the surface of her delicate body, a thin veil as thin as a cicada's wing appeared, carrying with it specks of light. It looked fragile, but it had an extremely strong defense. Boom! A violent explosion spread in all directions. Under everyone's gazes, Song Yuyao's delicate body rapidly retreated as an extremely strong recoil passed through the Heavenly Star Garment and slammed into her delicate body. Song Yuyao's face was sickly red as she spat out a mouthful of blood. The pride of the Starry Sword Pavilion had been injured. Everyone was silent as shock froze on their faces. Dongfang Ziyan was also surprised. Why is that guy so much stronger than before? Although Yi Guqin wasn't weak in the heavenly wasteland plains, he wasn't as strong as he was now, which surprised her. Someone who can kill Dongfang Hong is indeed capable. Dongfang Shiri narrowed his eyes slightly. After sending Song Yuyao flying with a single sword strike, Yi Guqin did not have the slightest bit of joy in his eyes. If Song Yuyao didn't have the protection of the Heavenly Star Silkworm robe, and if the venerable deacon didn't wake her up, Song Yuyao would have been heavily injured or even died from this sword strike. At this moment, blood flowed out from the corners of Song Yuyao's mouth, and her hair was disheveled. Obviously, she was unable to maintain her cold and arrogant appearance from before. Is this your pitiful pride? Who gave you the right to act so high and mighty in front of me? Yi Guqin's eyes were cold as he walked towards Song Yuyao. Holding the sword hilt diagonally, the sword tip pointed diagonally towards the ground. With every step he took, his aura would skyrocket. His aura was as deep as the abyss. Damn it, Yi Guqin, I want you dead. Song Yuyao screamed, her eyes filled with hatred. She didn't expect that she would be injured by Yi Guqin in a moment of carelessness. This was unacceptable to her. Star Silkworm Silk. Song Yuyao held the Alcade sword in one hand and spread out the 5 fingers of her other hand. 5 transparent silk threads extended from her fingers. The Star Silkworm Silk sliced through the air, making a sharp hissing sound. Yi Guqin frowned slightly. As one of the 7 Great Bears, Song Yuyao was naturally at least a 7th grade sky pride. However, he didn't know what Song Yuyao's talent was. Could it be the Star Silkworm Silk? Yi Guqin thought to himself. Whoosh! Song Yuyao unleashed her full power at the 9th stage and charged forward. She used the Starry Universe Sword Pavilion's movement technique, the 7 star steps. Her figure instantly turned into 7 afterimages. Yi Guqin used the wave-like subtle steps, and his figure also turned into afterimages. At the same time, the power of his extreme sea of qi and chaotic sea of knowledge burst out. Although he was only at the pinnacle of the great profound martial realm, his strength was no weaker than a 4th or 5th stage sky pride of the Heaven and Earth Spirit Bridge. If he used his ancient god form, it would be enough to challenge a 7th or 8th stage sky pride. Chain Star Sword Art. Song Yuyao attacked again, and the sword paths overlapped as if forming a celestial body. Her other hand controlled the Star Silkworm Silk at the same time, hiding in the void. It was extremely fast and unpredictable, making it difficult to lock onto with the naked eye. However, Yi Guqin's divine soul was extremely powerful, and he immediately sensed the restriction of the Star Silkworm Silk. He moved sideways and unleashed the Shura Sword Dao's sword domain. The blood-red sword light filled the sky as the 18 Shura Blood Sea attacked Song Yuyao. Heavenly Star Silkworm Silk. Song Yuyao summoned the Heavenly Star Silkworm Silk again. What was strange was that this protective treasure directly turned into a celestial body and resisted the Shura Blood Sea's suppression. Star Silkworm Silk, Phantom Kill. Song Yuyao's eyes and beautiful face were cold. She didn't expect someone who was like an ant in her eyes to be able to fight her to this extent. This made Song Yuyao extremely displeased. The 5 strands of star silkworm silk that extended out and hid in the void immediately tightened, bursting out countless silkworm phantoms that surrounded Yi Guqin. If it were an ordinary person, they would definitely be restrained and then strangled. However, 108,000 swords. Yi Guqin's eyes were sharp, and the 108,000 heaven-ripping sword souls in his body were like dragons, shocking the world. Endless sword souls swept out in all directions like a torrent. The star silkworm silk, whether they were phantoms or real, were directly drowned in the torrent of sword souls. Moreover, the 100,000 sword souls didn't stop and swept violently toward Song Yuyao. Song Yuyao's expression changed again. Even she felt a trace of fear in the face of such a torrent of sword souls. The heavenly star silkworm silk directly fell on her delicate body. However, the endless torrent of sword souls swept over and directly drowned Song Yuyao. Looking at Song Yuyao, who was swept into the torrent of sword souls, the hundreds of thousands of people around the forbidden Violet Mountain all fell silent, unable to make the slightest sound. With 108,000 sword souls at the same time, who could resist them? Senior sister Song. Even the defeated Zhou Heng's expression changed. A deacon of the Starry Sword Pavilion's aura couldn't help but become violent. Song Yuyao's aura is still there. She won't be defeated so easily, another supremacy said calmly. Yi Guqin, you must die today. A shrill scream, accompanied by extreme anger, came from the torrent of sword souls. A powerful wave of energy suddenly spread out. Then, under everyone's astonished gazes, a huge star silkworm appeared. Countless star silkworm silk violently surged out of the silkworm's body, intertwining and overlapping with each other to form a barrier that blocked the attack of the heaven-ripping sword souls. Song Yuyao's delicate body was exposed in the middle of the barrier. Although she was protected by the heavenly star silkworm silk, she was still coughing up blood and was severely injured. There were wounds on her jade-like arms. At this moment, her beautiful red eyes were filled with hatred and resentment as she coldly stared at Yi Guqin. All of her aloofness and arrogance were shattered at this moment. There was only endless shame and anger left. She was in such a sorry state in the hands of Yi Guqin. Chapter 766. This is Song Yuyao's gifted superpower? Yi Guqin was slightly surprised to see the star silkworm emerging from Song Yuyao's body. The star silkworm was several feet long. Its entire body was milky white, and its back was covered in starlight spots. It looked extremely strange. Song Yuyao's gifted superpower was this star silkworm that was born in her dantian. Song Yuyao's heavenly star silk and heavenly star silk were all provided by the star silkworm. The star silkworm could absorb the power of the stars to aid Song Yuyao's cultivation. It could be said that all of Song Yuyao's assets as a 7th grade prodigy were on this star silkworm. Song Yuyao would never use this star silkworm unless she had no other choice. Yi Guqin, no one can save you today. You will die without a doubt. Song Yuyao screamed, her pretty face filled with anger. Being trampled on by an ant in her eyes, Song Yuyao's mood could be imagined. The star silkworm seemed to feel its host's anger. Its milky white body turned red as if it had entered a state of rage. Next, to everyone's shock, the star silkworm also released the aura of a peak 5th grade demonic beast, which was equivalent to a human spiritual bridge stage. Hiss! The star silkworm hissed and released its aura. Its entire body rushed toward Yi Guqin, spitting out star silk. Yi Guqin's eyes flashed. He raised his hand, and endless 5-colored runes spread out. Emperor Jin, Emperor Qing, Emperor Black, Emperor Crimson, and Emperor Yellow. 5 swords of array appeared. The 5 Emperors' Cosmos sword array was activated. At the same time, an illusory 5-element sword field was used to imprison the star silkworm. The 5 swords of array bombarded the star silkworm one after another. The star silkworm's body was covered in a layer of starlight like a shell. It blocked the attack of the swords of array, and burst out endless sparks. Seeing this, Song Yuyao attacked again with the Alcade sword, while Yi Guqin blocked with his sword. The battle became white-hot again. Song Yuyao unleashed her stage 9 combat strength, wanting to suppress Yi Guqin. However, Yi Guqin let out a long roar, and countless light patterns bloomed on the surface of his body as he activated his ancient god form. His physical strength increased fivefold, and his aura soared once again. Even though Song Yuyao had the advantage of cultivation level, Yi Guqin's physical body and various techniques were too powerful. For a moment, they were in a stalemate. Senior Song, you won't lose, right? Not far away, Zhou Heng's heart pounded. Among the 7 great bears, only he and Song Yuyao had yet to reach the divine dwelling stage. He was the weakest of the 7 sons. Even so, he wasn't someone that ordinary dynasty prodigies could afford to offend. Damn it! In the middle of the battle, Song Yuyao's face was cold, but her heart was extremely depressed. The person in front of her, whom she had not taken seriously and whose name she had almost forgotten, had displayed enough strength to contend against her at this moment. A proud and arrogant woman like Song Yuyao would naturally feel embarrassed and angry. I must kill him in one move. Song Yuyao's eyes flashed with killing intent. She had also noticed that Yi Guqin's body was incredibly strong. If they fought for a long time, it would only be disadvantageous for her. Thinking of this, Song Yuyao gathered the qi in her body, and at the same time sensed with the star silkworm. The star silkworm seemed to have been injected with chicken blood. With a hiss, endless star silkworm silk erupted from its body and rushed in all directions, temporarily breaking through the 5 emperors' cosmos sword formation. Of course, the star shell on the star silkworm's body also cracked and many cracks appeared. Star God seclusion, all creation one move. The star silkworm's power was all added to Song Yuyao's body. Her whole body floated up, and her delicate body was bathed in dazzling starlight. Her aura surged as if she wanted to soar into the stars. Senior sister Song wants to decide the battle in one move, Zhou Heng muttered to himself. He even used this move. That arrogant and unruly little bastard is going to die soon. The 2 venerable deacons of the Starry Sword Pavilion couldn't help but sneer. Hundreds of thousands of people around the Forbidden Mountain were also nervously watching. After all, Song Yuyao's identity was very sensitive and attracted a lot of attention. News of this battle would definitely spread. Yi Guqin. Yan Wushuang clenched her jade-like hands and prayed. She didn't ask for Yi Guqin to defeat Song Yuyao. She only hoped that he could survive. Senior brother Yi. The other disciples of the Sword Sect Pagoda Forest were also watching. Kenpo, Princess Fengxi, and the others were also watching. Even the Vermilion Bird Jade, Yuwentian, and the others were watching. At the peak of the Forbidden Mountain, the power of the stars surged. Song Yuyao seemed to have turned into light, and her delicate body turned into a ray of light. Song Yuyao's cold voice filled with killing intent came from within the light. I said that you'll only be junior brother Xiaoyang's stepping stone for the rest of your life. This is your fate. Rather than living in pain and humiliation, why don't you let me free you? Song Yuyao raised the Alcade sword high, and an extremely dazzling starlight sword light illuminated the sky. Sword Qi whistled. Even the top prodigies like Xinghong Crown Prince were shocked when they saw this sword. They wouldn't be able to survive this sword. Ziyun, it's over. It seems like we don't have to do anything. Dongfang Shiri shook his head and prepared to leave. Indeed, Dongfang Ziyun's lips had a trace of mockery, as expected of an ant from a small dynasty that only knew how to struggle before death. The intense sword light in the sky was accompanied by intense wind pressure. It caused Yi Guqin's clothes to stick tightly to his skin. However, there wasn't the slightest bit of fear on his face. I'll decide my own fate. Yi Guqin put away the Xianming heavy sword, as if he was preparing a terrifying sword technique. What's wrong with Yi Guqin? He even put away his sword. Is he waiting for death? Everyone was shocked when they saw Yi Guqin put away his sword. Silly boy. Su Jianshi bit her lips as her heart tightened. The human emperor sword in her heart hummed along with her master's emotions. Although she wanted to help, she knew that Yi Guqin had his own pride. He wasn't willing to let others interfere in this battle. Under everyone's shocked gaze, Yi Guqin raised his left hand. Endless blood-red sword light soared into the sky, as if it was setting off a bloody storm. God-slaying sword technique. Then Yi Guqin raised his right hand. Sword light illuminated the sky as if a group of immortals had fallen. Yi Guqin's eyes seemed to reflect the scene of gods and demons weeping blood. God-slaying sword technique and immortal slaying sword technique were used at the same time. However, that wasn't all. Yi Guqin's figure slowly floated into the sky. Facing Song Yuyao's fatal sword, Yi Guqin didn't dodge. Instead, he was going to meet it head-on. Song Yuyao, what I want today isn't my life, but your life. God-slaying sword technique Permitha. Blood-red sword chi gushed out of Yi Guqin's hand as he became one with the sword. Immortal slaying sword technique, immortal fall. With another sentence, the sword radiance surged into the 9 heavens. Then, under everyone's shocked gazes, Yi Guqin slowly put his hands together as an unparalleled sword chi brewed from the extreme collision. Rumble. Thunder rumbled in the sky as the entire forbidden violet mountain trembled. Countless immortals' phantoms appeared. The immortals bled. The immortals fell. Immortal. God. Cry. A sword light soared through the sky. It divided heaven and earth and cut through the vast expanse. The immortals cried. Chapter 767. God-slaying and immortal slaying were sword techniques that originated from the Baiming family. When the two were combined, it would become the emperor-level sword technique, Immortal God's Weep. Generally speaking, it was very difficult to combine these two sword techniques. It was almost impossible. However, Yi Guqin could do it. With the sword demon talent, the tree of enlightenment, and the union of man and sword, Yi Guqin finally comprehended these two sword techniques to the extreme, and combined them into Immortal God's Weep. A sword slashed across the sky, as if an immortal god's shadow had appeared. The entire sky seemed to have turned blood red. The immortal god's shadow wept and wailed, as if it was a demonstration of the power of this sword. That's. Even Dongfang Shiri, and the others who were about to leave suddenly turned around with a look of extreme surprise on their faces. Even he felt an extreme sense of danger from that sword. Boom. Song Yuyao and Yi Guqin's ultimate moves collided. It wasn't as deafening as expected. Instead, it was temporarily lost in sound. Heaven and earth seemed to have lost all sound. Only the two powerful sword rays collided with each other and dissipated. Then, under everyone's full attention, Yi Guqin's Immortal God's Weep broke Song Yuyao's sword light. Then, it directly split the star silkworm into two. No. With a scream, Song Yuyao's figure fell from the sky. Her heavenly star silkworm robe was also directly shattered. She collapsed in the pit, blood gushing out of her red lips. Song Yuyao was defeated. At this moment, heaven and earth were silent. All the spectators' mouths were dry, and their backs were dripping with cold sweat. Today they had witnessed a miracle. An unprecedented miracle. A person from a low-level dynasty had defeated the heavens' pride of a top-level dynasty. He had even defeated the heavens' pride of an overlord-level faction. He won. Senior brother Yi won. All the disciples of the Sword Sect's pagoda forest roared wildly. Although Yi Guqin had left the sect, he was still their senior brother in their hearts. Their senior brother of the Sword Sect had created an unprecedented legend. From now on, Yi Guqin's name would spread throughout the entire Nantian region. Senior sister Song lost? Zhou Heng's heart trembled. Dongfang Shiri and Dongfang Ziyun were even more shocked. Although Dongfang Shiri was the #1 prodigy of the Dongfang family, he was only at the peak of the spiritual bridge of heaven and earth. Even if he wanted to defeat Song Yuyao, it would not be such a simple matter. Cough cough. In the pit, Song Yuyao kept coughing up blood. Her star silkworm had been destroyed by Yi Guqin's sword. In other words, Song Yuyao's innate divine ability was gone, and she would completely fall from the divine altar. Yi Guqin. Song Yuyao's eyes were filled with hatred and anger. Her jade-like face was ashen, and her eyes were murderous. Just at this moment, Yi Guqin, who was high up in the sky, took advantage of the opportunity to descend with lightning speed. What are you doing? Song Yuyao was shocked. Yi Guqin didn't say a word. With a flip of his wrist, the Xianming heavy sword carried the force of 1,000 caddies. He swung it down towards Song Yuyao, who was in the pit. This scene shocked everyone. Even the two deacons of the Starry Sword Pavilion in the sky didn't react for a moment. It wasn't that they were slow, but that they didn't expect Yi Guqin to come back with such a move. How dare you? Song Yuyao screamed. Her cold and arrogant face, which had always been high up in the air, was now distorted by extreme fear. The resentment in his eyes had also turned into deep fear. "Let's not talk about my life for now, but your life will be ended by me." Yi Guchen's words, which were full of killing intent, reached Song Yuyao's ears. Song Yuyao's face was pale. She struggled to get up in disbelief. But how could she, who was seriously injured, escape Yi Guchen's sudden fatal blow? "Little bastard, how dare you!" The two deacons also reacted, but they were a little far away. They immediately shouted. Yi Guchen ignored them and swung his sword at Song Yuyao. "If you dare to kill me, the Starry Sword Pavilion won't let you go. Junior brother Xiaoyang won't let you go either." Song Yuyao finally revealed a look of extreme fear. She no longer had the slightest bit of pride in front of Yi Guchen. All she had was the despair of waiting for the god of death's judgment. Boom. There was no soft-heartedness or hesitation. Yi Guchen's shimming heavy sword landed on Song Yuyao's delicate body ruthlessly. A series of cracking sounds followed by a dull sound rang out. Song Yuyao's internal organs, including her bones and tendons, were instantly shattered. A mouthful of blood mixed with crushed internal organs was spat out from Song Yuyao's red lips. Her beautiful eyes were wide open as she stared blankly at Yi Guchen. Her eyes were still filled with fear and disbelief. She would never believe that Yi Guchen dared to kill her in front of so many people. "Your life is only a little bit of interest. Go to hell and wait for Gu Xiaoyang." Yi Guchen muttered to himself in a cold tone as he looked at Song Yuyao, who was lying in a pool of blood. Her pupils were dilated and her vitality was fading away. From the moment Song Yuyao arrived, Yi Zichen had been stunned. Yi Guchen had already decided to kill her. Otherwise, he wouldn't have left the sect. Because Gu Xiaoyang was destined to be his mortal enemy. Since Song Yuyao was destined to stand by Gu Xiaoyang's side, it would be good for Yi Guchen to remove one of her claws as soon as possible. However, Yi Guchen's action made the faces of hundreds of thousands of people freeze. An incomparable look of shock appeared on everyone's faces. Yi Guchen, in front of hundreds of thousands of people, in front of the deacons of the Starry Sword Pavilion, killed Song Yuyao. This was simply poking a hole in the sky. What kind of existence was the Starry Sword Pavilion? It was an overlord force that had stood in the South Horizon region for tens of thousands of years. It was a top existence that had a heavenly tribulation saint. Killing one of the 7 great bears of the Starry Sword Pavilion in front of so many people. Everyone could only think of one result. It was death. Yi Guchen was definitely going to die. Not to mention wind-sweeping building. Even a top empire or 10 top empires together wouldn't be able to save Yi Guchen. Yi Guchen is really going to poke a hole in the sky. Some martial artists took a deep breath. He killed senior sister Song. Zhou Heng was also stunned. He froze on the spot and felt a lingering fear. Yi Guchen had attacked him at that time. Zhou Heng shuddered in disbelief. The 2 venerable deacons also couldn't believe it. Their faces froze at first, then a furious scarlet color appeared in their eyes. "You little bastard, you're courting death." The 2 deacons were seething with anger. They were angry not only because Yi Guchen had killed Song Yuyao. They were also angry because Yi Guchen's action was tantamount to looking down on the Starry Sword Pavilion. One of the venerables directly attacked without any scruples. He didn't care about his face or his status. He just wanted Yi Guchen to die. "Starry Sword Pavilion, if you want to come, then come. I, Yi Guchen, am not afraid of anyone." Yi Guchen's black hair fluttered in the wind as his aura surged. Chapter 768. Boom. A deafening sound reverberated throughout the entire Forbidden City. Everyone was still in a state of deep disbelief. They couldn't believe that Yi Guchen dared to do this. He's dead. Yi Guchen is dead for sure. No one can save him. Xinghong Crown Prince was so excited that his face turned red. With Yi Guchen's talent, he could have risen to power. However, he was so stupid to do such a thing. Yi Guchen killed an overlord's disciple in front of so many people. There was no way he could survive in the South Sky region. How many dynasties had been wiped out by overlord forces? Not to mention that Yi Guchen was only at the life and death chamber. The deafening sound echoed in all directions. Everyone looked at the place where the smoke and dust had dissipated. Yi Guchen couldn't have been killed with one palm, right? Some warriors looked at the forbidden city. Stupid kid. Su Jianshi cried out. Her body flashed as she charged at Yi Guchen. Brother Yi, sister Su. Shui was also in the crowd. She wanted to rush out, but she was stopped by Ji Ling, Yi Guchen. Yan Wushuang's expression changed as she also wanted to rush out. Come back. Yan Chang'e stopped Yan Wushuang. Yan Chang'e had the responsibility of a sect master. He couldn't let Yan Wushuang and the other disciples go to waste. Brother Yi. Many disciples of the sword sect pagoda choked and clenched their fists. Deacon Zhenggu should have killed that little bastard with one palm. High up in the sky, Deacon Li Kuang said coldly. His eyes were still filled with anger. Now that Song Yuyao was dead, the two deacons who had escorted her here would also be severely punished. He, Yi Guchen is really daring. He even dares to kill someone from the Starry Universe Sword Pavilion. On the other side, Dongfang Ziyun's lips curled into a cold smile. Looks like we don't have to do anything today. That kid is probably dead by now. TSK, he does have some skills, but it's a pity that he's too reckless and brainless. Dongfang Shuri sneered and shook his head. The hundreds of thousands of people fell silent at this moment. The deacons of the Starry Universe Sword Pavilion were all at the Venerable Realm. It was impossible for Yi Guchen to survive. However, when the smoke and dust dissipated, everyone's pupils shrank in that instant. In front of Yi Guchen, Feng Manlu, who was dressed in plain clothes, stretched out his hand and blocked Zhenggu's attack. Do you think you can kill my disciple as you please? Feng Manlu stood straight and blocked Deacon Zhenggu's attack with his palm. A gust of wind blew across Lulu's forehead. At this moment, those blind eyes seemed to contain a cold arrogance that could suppress the heavens. It was like a peerless sword that could shake the world. It was blocked by wind-sweeping tower. After a brief moment of dead silence, there was an uproar like a stormy sea. Wind-sweeping tower. He really attacked. Everyone was stunned, and their eyes popped out. It should be said that Feng Manlu's cultivation was only at the 7th level of the Divine Dwelling Realm, but he blocked Deacon Zhenggu's attack. Even Deacon Zhenggu looked a little surprised. His strength was indeed not high among the deacons of the Starry Universe Sword Pavilion. He was only at the 2nd level of the Venerable Realm, but no matter what, he was still a Venerable. Yet he was blocked by a 7th level of the Divine Dwelling Realm. This made Zhenggu feel ashamed and angry. Today, Yi Guchen must pay with his life for killing my disciple. How dare you make an enemy of the Starry Universe Sword Pavilion? Zhenggu roared angrily. Not to mention the 7th level of the Divine Dwelling Realm. Even top venerables and saints would be wary of the Starry Universe Sword Pavilion. But, so what if you're from the Starry Universe Sword Pavilion? Even if a saint comes, don't think of making me take a step back. Feng Manlu's tone was firm and calm, but it contained an incomparable domineering aura. This was the pride of a sword cultivator. This was the confidence of an expert. You're courting death. Zhenggu was furious. He attacked again. His vigorous Venerable Realm Qi turned into a giant handprint that pressed down on Feng Manlu and Yi Guchen. Feng Manlu's long hair fluttered as endless sword light soared from his body. He was like a peerless sword that could cut through the heavens. With his Divine Dwelling Realm cultivation, he defied the heavens to fight a Venerable. Zhenggu wasn't someone who had just become a Venerable like Xian Wuji. Even if he was only at the 2nd level of the Venerable Realm, his strength was far stronger than Xian Wuji. Coupled with the many cultivation techniques and martial arts of the Starry Universe Sword Pavilion, Zhenggu's strength was very powerful. Boom! A great battle began. Su Jianshi landed beside Yi Guchen. She threw herself into Yi Guchen's arms, her jade-like arms hugging Yi Guchen's body tightly. Silly boy, don't do this again. Don't do this again. Su Jianshi's eyes were red as she cried. At the same time, she felt incomparably scared. Zhenggu's attack was too sudden. If Feng Manlu had not been able to block it in time, he would not have been able to escape. Su Jianshi didn't dare to imagine the consequences. It's okay. We'll be fine today. Yi Guchen stroked Su Jianshi's back. He still had one last trick up his sleeve. Blackie, come here. Yi Guchen tilted his head and shouted. Everyone thought that Yi Guchen was reckless and brainless. But was that really the case? Yi Guchen didn't have any real tricks up his sleeve. Why would he attack? Blackie heard Yi Guchen's call and squeaked in the crowd of Swordsek's forest of pagodas. Why did Yi call you silly monkey? Are you going to fight the venerables of the Starry Universe Sword Pavilion? At the side, the divine condor cursed silently, but it still grabbed Blackie with its claws, flapped its wings, and flew towards Yi Guchen. But at this moment, Li Sun, the other deacon of the Starry Universe Sword Pavilion, had a murderous look in his eyes. He didn't say a word and directly released his Venerable Realm aura. 4th level of the Venerable Realm. He was even more powerful than Zhenggu. Little bastard, you won't be able to live after killing the people of the Starry Universe Sword Pavilion. Li Sun's voice was majestic and carried an unparalleled chilling murderous intent. It spread for hundreds of miles. There was a loud bang. Li Sun stretched out his hand and condensed his vigorous true energy into a huge palm print that covered the sky. It smashed toward Yi Guchen. He wanted to kill Yi Guchen with one palm. Oh no. Yi Guchen's heart skipped a beat. The palm was too fast and didn't give Yi Guchen any time to react. In less than a breath's time, the huge palm print smashed toward Yi Guchen and Su Jianshi. But at this moment, Su Jianshi turned her head and glanced at Yi Guchen. Her eyes were filled with infatuation and determination. Silly boy, you've always been protecting me. Today I'll also. Sword sweeps the world. Sword of the human sovereign. Su Jianshi chanted. She didn't hesitate. Even if she was exposed and Di Haoyan sensed her location, it didn't matter. Because she wanted Yi Guchen to live. Boom. An indescribably terrifying golden light burst out from Su Jianshi's body. An ancient golden sword appeared in Su Jianshi's heart and expanded. It was as if it could destroy the world and suppress the heavens. The sword of the human sovereign had reappeared. Chapter 769. Countless runes and patterns flowed on the surface of the ancient golden sword. It was as if countless human epics were manifesting within it. The decline of dynasties, the rise of the sun, and the fall of the moon. The human sovereign's sword was an immemorial sacred weapon forged by an immemorial divine craftsman, known as Xianyuan Peerless, the god of the 9 heavens. It was also 1/3 of the Tri-Emperor sacred artifact, ranked 7th on the Earth ranking. It possessed unimaginable power. The reason why the Starry Sword Pavilion was able to rank among the overlords was because of this sword. The 7-star Dragon Abyss, ranked 12th on the Earth ranking. Although the human emperor's sword was only 1/3 of the Tri-Emperor sacred artifact, its power was still boundless. Su Jianshi hadn't used the full power of the human emperor's sword before, because she was afraid that Di Haoyan would detect it. But it didn't matter now. Su Jianshi would do anything to keep Yi Guchen alive. Human Emperor's Chapter, Heart of Heaven and Earth. Su Jianshi roared as her hair danced in the wind, and was covered in a layer of gold. At the same time, her bright and clear eyes turned into a pure gold color. They were like the eyes of an emperor looking down on all life. Su Jianshi had completely activated the power of the human emperor's sword. The chanting of the human emperor's sword seemed to come from the void. Heart of heaven and earth, life of all life. No. Yi Guchen's expression changed. He knew that Su Jianshi couldn't fully activate the human emperor's sword with her current strength. The price she had to pay was very heavy. A trace of blood flowed down from the corner of Su Jianshi's mouth. Her eyes were dyed pure gold as tears of blood flowed down. But when the sword struck out, it was silent. The entire place was dead silent. Countless pairs of shocked eyes looked at the top of the Forbidden City. The ancient golden sword gently tore through the void. It was as if countless figures had appeared, emitting boundless golden light. With a sweep of his sword he directly broke apart Li Sun's palm imprint, and continued to attack Li Sun without any reduction in power. How can this be? Li Sun screamed as she unleashed her full strength. She used countless trump cards and took out her armor. Rumble. It was as if the heavens were trembling. The golden sword light completely illuminated the sky. Heaven and earth were filled with a blazing golden brilliance. Everyone was shocked and speechless. At this moment, his heart seemed to have stopped beating. What did they see? A young girl at the life and death chamber realm was waving her sword at Li Sun, who was at the fourth sky of venerable realm. Furthermore, he had broken through Li Sun's attack. Everyone was dumbfounded and stood rooted to the ground. All that was left was deep shock and disbelief. Pucci. At the place where the sword ray struck, the sound of blood being violently vomited could be heard, as well as a furious roar. Damn it, who the hell are you? When the light dissipated, Li Meng's figure appeared. When they saw Li Sun's figure appear, everyone's eyes froze. Li Sun's body, from her shoulder to her abdomen, had a huge blood-colored wound. Blood kept flowing out, and even her wriggling internal organs could be seen. His aura was extremely weak, and his chin was covered in blood. In his ferocious eyes, apart from rage and fury, there was also a deep fear. What kind of sword did that girl use? Feeling the power of the ancient golden sword floating above Su Jianshir's head, the 400,000 to 500,000 people present were all stunned. It was as if millions of thunderbolts were rumbling in their minds. That's... Even Dongfang Shiri and Dongfang Ziyun gasped. Their eyes were filled with extreme fear. They had thought that Yi Guqin was already extremely strong. In the end, this unknown girl beside him was the most heaven-defying character. Cough. However, after using this sword, Su Jianshir suddenly coughed up a large mouthful of blood. Her face was extremely pale, and her delicate body trembled. The human sovereign sword also returned to Su Jianshir's body. Yi Guqin flashed and hugged Su Jianshir's slender waist. Su Jianshir, are you alright? Yi Guqin hurriedly looked at her. Su Jianshir fainted. Her snow-white chin was covered in blood, and tears of blood flowed from the corners of her eyes. Her body had been overdrawn to the limit. Yi Guqin hurriedly sent some pills and ancient god blood into Su Jianshir's body. Even so, it could only alleviate her pain for a while. You all deserve to die. Yi Guqin's eyes were focused, and his killing intent shook the heavens. Every cell in his body seemed to emit flames of fury that wanted to burn the heavens. Two elders, that girl must have a secret. In the Dongfang family's camp, Dongfang Shiri's eyes were filled with greed as he looked at Su Jianshir. She was only in the life and death realm, and she had relied on the ancient golden sword to heavily injure a fourth-level sovereign. This was simply shocking and unbelievable. Could that be the human sovereign sword? However, one of the two honorable elders from the Dongfang family exclaimed in astonishment. What, the human sovereign sword? Dongfang Shiri's expression froze. Dongfang Ziyun's face was also filled with shock. That's right, it's definitely the human sovereign sword. Back then, the heavenly god sword sect joined forces, including my Dongfang family, to destroy the Su family in order to obtain the human sovereign sword. I heard that the human sovereign sword is with the genius saint, Su Qingyu's daughter, Su Jianshir. Could it be this girl? The Dongfang family's sovereign spoke with excitement in his eyes. Although they were only a side branch of the Dongfang family, they knew a little about the destruction of the Su family. If that's the case, then all the more we must obtain it. That's 1/3 of the 3 sovereign saint swords. If we obtain it, then the side branch of the Dongfang family will also rise, and we won't be any weaker than the main branch. Dongfang Shiri's eyes were filled with passion. The main branch of the Dongfang family also had an ancient famed sword. However, the side branch not only had a low status, but they also didn't have an ancient famed sword. Alright, we must obtain this sword. The two sovereigns of the Dongfang family looked at each other and stepped out. Fellow Taoist of the Starry Sword Pavilion, let us help you. The two Dongfang family elders stepped out. This time everyone was shocked. The Dongfang family also attacked. Damn it. Li Sun's eyes darkened. However, how could he not know that the ancient golden sword was definitely extraordinary? Otherwise it wouldn't have been able to injure him, a fourth heaven venerable. Li Sun and the two Dongfang family elders rushed toward Yi Guqin. Zheng Gu, on the other hand, was fighting with Feng Manlu. Ha ha ha. Good, very good. All of you, come at me. What sovereigns? What overlords? Today I, Yi Guqin, will slaughter all of you. Yi Guqin's hair stood on end, and his eyes turned scarlet. These overlords treated him and Su Jianshi like fish on a chopping board, and could be easily slaughtered. However, Yi Guqin was not a soft persimmon that anyone could bully. An extremely terrifying killing intent swept through the 9 heavens imperial court, shaking the heavens and earth. Who cares if they're sovereigns? Who cares if they're sovereigns? I'll kill them all. Yi Guqin's anger was like an erupting volcano. It burned the entire area and even the sky. Today, all of you will die. Yi Guqin's eyes were scarlet red. Blackie also came to his side. Just as Yi Guqin was about to release Blackie's seal, an indescribably terrifying sword ray emerged from Yi Guqin's body. This sword light caused the heavens to tremble. It cut through the void. This is... Yi Guqin's eyes narrowed. Chapter 770. Back then, Yi Guqin had left a sword mark on the one-sword cliff in the inner courtyard of the sword sect's forest of pagodas. The 3 sword gleams entered Yi Guqin's body at the same time. Yi Guqin knew that the sword gleams were left behind by the 8th generation sword sect's Yi Tianxing. It was one of the opportunities prepared for the 9th generation sword sect's echelon. 3 sword gleams. One was to help when he was breaking through. One was to help when he was risking his life. One was to help when he was on the brink of death. When Yi Guqin broke through the limit of his sea of qi, the first sword gleam appeared and helped him break through. Now, Yi Guqin was enraged because of Su Jianshi's injury. The raging fury that wanted to burn the 8 desolates and 9 worlds. And the aura of risking his life completely triggered the sword gleam that was dormant in Yi Guqin's body. The second sword gleam left behind by the 8th generation sword sect's Yi Tianxing appeared. The sword gleam's terrifying fluctuation was indescribable. It was like the most terrifying light in the world. Enough to blind everyone's eyes. As the sword gleam appeared, a figure shrouded in light spoke with a faint voice. The second sword gleam helped when he was risking his life. The figure was shrouded in endless divine light, making it impossible to see his face or figure. But the faint voice seemed to spread throughout the 3 realms. It was an indescribable feeling. It was like an ant facing a giant dragon. Even a celestial palace honorable was like an ant in front of this illusory figure. They had no power to resist. This voice, Little Fatty, who was in the sword sect's forest of pagodas, suddenly froze. It was familiar. The figure calmly extended a finger and pointed forward. The unparalleled sword gleam that seemed to be able to cut through the void, and shot toward Li Sun, and the 2 supremacies of the Dongfang family. Wherever it passed, the void silently collapsed, revealing pitch-black spatial turbulence. The only time Yi Guqin saw the void shattering was when the Heavenly Eye Monarch and the chaotic world demonic ape fought. Now Yi Tianxing's figure stretched out a finger, and a sword gleam shattered the endless void. What kind of supreme power was this? No. What is this? The faces of Li Sun and the 2 elders of the Dongfang family were extremely distorted at this moment, as if they had seen something extremely terrifying. The aura of that illusory figure gave them the illusion that they were looking at the pavilion master of the Starry Universe Sword Pavilion, and the patriarch of the Dongfang family. No, he was even stronger than them, reaching a heaven-defying level. No, nothing could stop this sword light. Li Sun and the 2 elders of the Dongfang family could only let out extremely terrified screams. Immediately after, they were annihilated by the sword ray into particles smaller than dust and dissipated between heaven and earth. Even Yi Guqin was stunned. The power of this sword ray exceeded his imagination. After releasing the sword ray, the shadow turned into a rain of light and dissipated. The blazing light between heaven and earth dissipated. Only then did everyone regain their vision. However, there was nothing left. In the area where Li Sun and the 2 elders were, there was only a slowly closing spatial crack. Nothing else existed. The 3 powerful martial highnesses were annihilated without a sound, as if they were never there. Not even their corpses were left behind. Hiss! The hundreds of thousands of people present froze on the spot. Countless gasps could be heard from all directions. Those were 3 martial highnesses. They were not just any Tom, Dick, or Harry, but martial highnesses of the Heavenly Palace, who were considered absolute powerhouses in the entire South Sky region. They were annihilated with a single sword stroke. Shocking. Stunned. Unparalleled madness. This was Yi Guqin's doing? Princess Feng Shi, who had always been shrewd and never revealed her true feelings, covered her red lips with both hands at this moment. Her eyes were wide open, and she was unprecedentedly shocked. Then what kind of technique was that? Kenpo was stunned. Even the top powerhouses of the Sword Dynasty and Sword Dao Alliance would not be able to display such a terrifying sword stroke. A miracle. I definitely saw a miracle today. Some sword cultivators even knelt on the ground and cried bitterly. There were also sword cultivators who were kowtowing and worshipping. That sword ray stunned the 9 heavens and 10 lands. But who would have thought that it was only one of the 3 sword rays left behind by Yi Tianxing? How strong is Yi Tianxing, the 8th generation sword master? What kind of shocking inheritance is the sword faction? Even with Yi Guqin's sword demon nature, he could not help but take a deep breath at this moment. When he had subdued the heaven-ripping sword soul in the sword-seeking steel, he had seen Yi Tianxing's consciousness clone. It looked like an extremely ordinary middle-aged man who could not be picked out in a crowd. He did not expect his true technique to be so powerful. But now Yi Guqin's crisis was finally resolved for the time being. He had killed 3 martial highnesses with a single sword ray. A group of people would be scared to death if this spread out. And most importantly, no one knew the origin of the sword ray in Yi Guqin's body. Could this be Yi Guqin's technique? How is it possible? Yi Guqin's strength is only at the hidden latch of life and death. Even if he started cultivating in his mother's womb, he can't be so strong to this extent. But what's with that sword ray? Everyone was shocked. Dongfang Shiri and Dongfang Ziyin seemed to have been petrified together with their bodies and souls. They stood straight and choked, unable to make any sound. Prince Xinghong's face turned pale as if he had been struck by lightning. There were 2 martial highnesses of the Sky Star dynasty beside him. If it were not for the fact that the Sky Star dynasty was not strong enough to compete with the Dongfang family and the Starry Sword Pavilion for the human sovereign sword, they would probably have joined in. However, Yi Guqin had killed 3 martial highnesses with a single sword strike, which was really shocking. The 2 martial highnesses of the Sky Star dynasty trembled, as if they had been struck dumb. No. Impossible. Absolutely impossible. On the other side, Deacon Zhenggu, who was fighting with Feng Manlu, also had his eyes wide open. His eyes were filled with disbelief. Li Sun, who was stronger than him, had been killed with a single sword strike? Yi Guqin's eyes turned to Zhenggu. Zhenggu's heart skipped a beat, as if he was a prey being targeted by a hunter. After throwing out a palm strike, he immediately retreated. Damn it! You killed the martial highnesses of the Starry Sword Pavilion. You must all die. Zhenggu roared as he retreated. This caused everyone to feel a sense of dizziness, and they were about to faint. The deacon of the Starry Sword Pavilion, an overlord force, had slipped away like a mouse. Deacon? Zhou Heng was also frozen on the spot, his face pale. Next, let's go there. Yi Guqin's eyes flashed. Although the sword ray had intimidated everyone, it was only a simple thought. However, if one thought about it, one would realize that it was not Yi Guqin's power. Yi Guqin couldn't have used such a technique consecutively. Therefore, Yi Guqin had to find a way out for himself. Yi Guqin already had a place in mind. He had to go there before leaving the Saint Origin dynasty. Master, let's leave. Yi Guqin hugged the unconscious Su Jianshi and said to Feng Manlu. Feng Manlu nodded slightly. The divine condor grabbed Blackie and followed Yi Guqin. And that little fatty, with a flash of his body, followed Yi Guqin. Yi Guqin and the others turned into streaks of light and flew into the distance. 15 minutes after Yi Guqin left, the hundreds of thousands of people woke up from their daze. Instantly, an earth-shattering uproar broke out. It wasn't hard to imagine that what had happened today would spread throughout the dynasty, and even cause a huge storm in the South Horizon region. Chapter 771. What did I just see? Have I gone mad? Or has the world gone mad? Everyone went mad. especially the disciples of the sword sect's forest of towers. They were practically on the verge of howling. Their sect's eldest senior brother had killed 3 supremacies in an instant. And they were all from overlord forces. This was a kind of refreshing feeling to his heart's content. Let you be high and mighty. Let you decide who lives and who dies as you please. Those who viewed Yi Guqin as meat on the chopping block, whether it was Song Yuyao or Li Sun, were all dead. Senior brother Yi can really create miracles. Ji Ling, Chu Qingqi, and the others were also shocked. They felt as if their blood was about to boil. Yi Guqin was really going against fate. Yi Guqin. Yan Wushuang's heart was shaken and filled with emotion. But there was no doubt that Yi Guqin had become an unerasable mark in her heart. But she also felt bitter because compared to Su Jianshi, her contribution to Yi Guqin was insignificant. Damn it, damn it, damn it. Dongfang Shiri's face turned purple as he cursed 3 times in a row. Although they were members of the Dongfang family, they were only a branch family and didn't have many sovereigns in the Celestial Palace. But now 2 of them had died. Dongfang Shiri was about to go crazy, his eyes red. Brother Shiri, what should we do? Dongfang Ziyun was also flustered. She wanted to use Yi Guqin as a scapegoat, but she didn't expect Yi Guqin to have such a trick up his sleeve. Damn it, it's all your fault, you bitch. If it weren't for your instigation, I wouldn't have come here, and the 2 elders wouldn't have died like this. Dongfang Shiri couldn't help but slap Dongfang Ziyun's face. Dongfang Ziyun was sent flying. Her pretty face was swollen and bruised. She gritted her teeth. Her internal organs were burning with anger, but she didn't dare show it. But at this moment, Deacon Zhenggu, who had fled far away, returned. Where is that little bastard? Zhenggu's expression turned even uglier when he sensed the strange and obscure gazes around him. As a deacon of the Starry Universe Sword Pavilion, he was actually scared away by a prodigy from a low-level dynasty. If this were to spread out, Zhenggu's face would be completely lost. But just now, Zhenggu was really scared. After all, even Li Gui, whose cultivation was higher than his, was killed by a single sword strike. But after thinking about it carefully, Zhenggu realized something. It was impossible for Yi Guqin to continuously use such power, much less casually use it. Otherwise, Yi Guqin could have made a move right from the start. Thinking of this, Zhenggu turned back. Deacon Zhenggu, Yi Guqin and his group have already escaped. I don't know where they went. Zhou Heng also understood the situation, and his face turned cold. Don't worry, they won't be able to get far. I'll inform Elder Ancient Star to come here. Zhenggu's face was cold as he spoke through gritted teeth. If they didn't kill Yi Guqin, where would the Starry Universe Sword Pavilion's face go? You want to alert Elder Ancient Star? Zhou Heng's face changed. Elder Ancient Star was a false saint expert. In the Overlord forces, the true saints didn't care about worldly affairs. They focused on cultivating or traveling to different places to find opportunities to reach a higher level. Therefore, most of the people who were in charge of the sect were false saint experts. Zhou Heng didn't expect that Elder Ancient Star would be alerted to kill Yi Guqin. What do you know? That girl is most likely the surviving member of the Su family. That ancient golden sword is most likely the human sovereign sword that the Sky God Sword sect has been looking for. Zhenggu said angrily. The destruction of the Su family was a shocking event that shook the entire South Horizon region. As a deacon of the Starry Universe Sword Pavilion, he naturally heard about it. He didn't recognize it at first, but now he understood. So that's how it is. Zhou Heng thought of the dead Song Yiyao. I'll inform Gu Xiaoyang. He'll be furious. Zhou Heng sneered in his heart. Although Song Yuyao's death was a pity, she wasn't his woman after all. On the other hand, Gu Xiaoyang would definitely be furious. Thinking of this, Zhou Heng picked up the communication jade slip. On the other side, Dongfang Shiri's face was cold. He decided to inform the leaders of the collateral families to come. Even Xinghong Crown Prince of the Sky Star Dynasty asked, "Is grandfather free? Ask him to come." With grandfather's strength as a false saint, Yi Guqin will definitely die. Are we going to alert the retired emperor? Even the 2 honorables of the Sky Star Dynasty were shocked. We have to get rid of Yi Guqin. Otherwise, there will be a disaster in the future. No matter how unwilling Xinghong Crown Prince was, he had to admit that he was indeed afraid of Yi Guqin's growth. Yi Guqin was someone who even dared to confront the overlord forces. Since the Sky Star dynasty had provoked such a powerful enemy, they had to eliminate him completely. Also, I've got 2 immemorial sword tokens. With the changes in the Tianhuang plain, there might really be an immemorial sword. It'll be safer if grandfather comes, Xinghong Crown Prince said. Today's incident alarmed all forces. Starry Universe Sword Pavilion, Dongfang family's collateral branch, and the Sky Star dynasty all notified their experts. For a moment, everyone felt that the small Saint Origin dynasty would become a place where a storm was brewing. In the next few days, what happened in the Violet Forbidden Mountain spread throughout the entire dynasty at the speed of a plague. It even caused a small commotion in the South Horizon region. After all, someone dared to challenge the authority of an overlord force. Moreover, the person was a genius from a low-level dynasty. This added a touch of legend to the matter. Everyone knew that Yi Guqin would suffer the wrath of an overlord force. No one would be able to save him. Along with this news, the deathly aura that erupted from the eternal demon city in the Tianhuang plain had eroded half of the dynasty. A large area of land had turned into a demonic land. Countless mortals and low-level martial artists were drawn into the deathly aura and were eroded. For a moment, the entire Saint Origin dynasty was boiling and became the eye of the storm. Saint Origin dynasty, imperial capital. The current imperial capital was no longer as prosperous as it had been in the past. After Situ Hongxue massacred the imperial palace, and the Yuan master and the others had died, the entire imperial capital had fallen into chaos and clamor. In front of a tavern in the imperial capital, a loud shout was heard. "You old man, you never pay for your drinks. You only buy on credit. Get out of here." One of the waiters kicked a dirty old man out of the room. "What do you mean by buying on credit? Didn't I use this hammer to pay off my debt?" The old drunkard shouted at the top of his lungs. "Get out of here. Take your broken hammer and get out of here." A hammer was thrown out and hit the old drunkard's head. Ouch! The old drunkard fell to the ground and rubbed his head. Then, he put away the hammer and stood up as if nothing had happened. He patted the dust off his body. His dizzy, drunken eyes glanced in a certain direction. It was the direction of the Forbidden Mountain. That half-disciple of mine really knows how to cause trouble. He even dared to kill people from the Starry Universe Sword Pavilion and the Dongfang family. But don't die. I still need you to help me fulfill my wish. After being silent for so long, I wonder how many people in the South Horizon region are willing to give me, the Southern Forging Saint hand, some face. I can only help you with this little bit of face. The old drunkard. No, he should be called Duan Tianfeng. He shook his head and laughed. Then he staggered away with the remaining half of his gourd of wine. No one in the Saint Origin dynasty knew about this drunken, destitute old man. He was the 8th grade grandmaster blacksmith who was once as famous as Xiao Gongshu. The Southern Forging Saint Han, Duan Tianfeng. You're tuning in to the Li Mei's Wuxia Whispers YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.